27.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr.
are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up for 3 minutes past 6. It is, of course, a Thursday, the 11th of September. Bizarrely, you might not remember this if you're too young, but it is, of course, the anniversary of the September 11th attacks back in the early part of this century, when I was still fairly young, when two planes were flown into the World Trade Center and thousands of people were killed as a result, and it was a sort of revenge of Al-Qaeda. So we'll just mark that, because unfortunately this morning we're not going to be having a laugh, because we're going to be thinking about what happened last night, which was so horrible. I don't even know where to begin. Charlie Kirk, a right-wing polemicist, I suppose you might say, a bloke who started Turning Point in America, a guy who was, to all intents and purposes, just a very interesting thinker, a very interesting, argumentative type of person, but a man who, bizarrely, amongst many other things, had a family, was 31 years of age, was speaking at Utah yesterday, and had always encouraged people to, debate about whether or not the right was right or whether the left was right, and who had, by complete coincidence, retweeted something that I did only a few weeks ago, has been assassinated, shot dead, by somebody who has yet to be apprehended. We don't know who did it, we don't know why they did it, but we do know that they did it with one shot, and it kind of brings back memories of John F. Kennedy being killed, it brings back memories of Robert F. Kennedy being killed, it brings back memories of Martin Luther King being assassinated, it brings back all sorts of really, really horrible, awful, ghastly things about America and how dangerous America can be. So I'm not going to make any apologies this morning for being rather serious. I'm sorry about that. Poppy Coburn is here from The Telegraph. Poppy, very good morning to you. She met Charlie Kirk, she knows him, she's going to tell us about it. We're going to go live over to Utah and speak to a reporter there to find out what the latest situation is. But it's one of those days where you wake up and you just think, what's wrong with the world? Why can people not just get on with each other without shooting each other? for heaven's sake. It's 5 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham. Let's get it on. Obviously, Charlie Kirk was somebody that was known to Donald Trump. There were many pictures of him with Donald Trump, the president. He was very much part of the MAGA movement. He was the young sort of version of it. My own son, who very much follows this kind of thing, was one of those who told me about it, even though I already knew about it, but he alerted me to it. Let's have a look at what Donald Trump had to say.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight, all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. Today, because of this heinous act, Charlie's voice has become bigger and grander than ever before, and it's not even close. May God bless his memory, may God watch over his family, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Donald Trump speaking there just a few hours ago. Poppy Coburn's here from Telegraph. Poppy, very good morning to you. You knew Charlie Kirk. You'd met Charlie Kirk before. This is awful, isn't it? Just horrible.
Yeah, it's just appalling. I mean, it was a very brief meeting during the US inauguration. He's a massive superstar. I mean, I think in the UK we kind of don't realise just how important a figure Charlie was. I don't really think you could get closer to the Trump administration in terms of influence in the last election than maybe Elon Musk.
Right.
So he started out,
millions of followers, right?
Millions of followers. I mean, he started out in 2012. You mentioned Turning Point USA. This was like a college campus group. It was like a conservative free speech group. I mean, you know, in 10 years, there's now 800 chapters. It was a massive galvanising force for the Republican Party to get people out the door. And, you know, it's not just that he's extremely successful. It's not just that he's close to the president. By all accounts, across the political spectrum, he was a really wonderful guy. You know, he was actually in the UK a couple of weeks ago. He was speaking at the Cambridgeian. And, you know, what the Cambridgeian is like, it's young, relatively liberal students. But even they, you know, they applauded him. They thought he was fantastic. You know, he was completely holding the room. People coming up to talk to him afterwards. You know, the idea that when he was speaking, again, to a crowd of students, this superstar, this very wealthy, influential man, he still would go on stage at these local college campuses and debate with students. That's what he was doing when he died. He was debating with students. And, you know, that's why it's so appalling. You know, he didn't have this massive security crowd around him. You know, he was still going out there and doing the things that made him famous.
Which, as you say, he didn't have to do.
No,
he did it because he wanted to.
Exactly. And the chilling effect that this is going to have on free speech. I mean, if you can't speak to a crowd of students without having bulletproof glass in front of you, which I think a lot of conservative commentators are going to be thinking now, like, where is now safe? I've got my security guards so no one rushes me on stage. But what if someone is in that building up there with a rifle 200 yards away? I mean, it's just appalling. And that, you know, it's an act of political terrorism. While we don't know
it's chilling, isn't it?
It's chilling. We don't know who's done it. We don't know what the motive is yet. So, you know, we can't speculate on this stuff. But there has also been a really heightened moment of rhetoric around the Republican Party in the US. People calling them fascists, people saying they're a danger to democracy.
And look at, they did the same thing here. John McDonnell yesterday came out and likened Nigel Farage to Hitler.
Exactly.
You know, we were both at the Reform Party conference last weekend. And I was amazed at how many security staff Nigel had around him. It was like 8 to 10 people just walking around with him.
Well, do you remember when people used to make jokes about the milkshaking?
Yeah.
People throwing milkshakes at Nigel Farage. You know, he was like, this isn't a laughing matter. This is serious.
Yeah.
Because, of course, he's frightened for his life. You know, if you're a politician, particularly if you're on the right, you're going to get threats against your life all the time. And most of the time, of course, it's just some nutter. But I think occasions like what's happened to Charlie Kirk...
But the trouble is the nutters in America have got rifles.
Got rifles, exactly. And I just think it's appalling. And I think it needs to be condemned across the political spectrum, because, you know, this is a man who was 31 years old. He's leaving behind his wife. He's leaving behind his two
young
kids.
Children,
two kids. One has only just turned 1 year old.
But isn't it interesting, though, because I was sort of glued to the TV last night when it happened. It was almost, you know, my bedtime, because I tried to go to bed about 10 o'clock. But I couldn't stop watching it because I couldn't believe the reaction from some aspects of American political kind of, you know, what you might call, you know, sensible people who were literally kind of not condemning it and going, well, he asked for it. You know, he's a right-winger, so therefore this is what happens.
Oh, it's just
you kind
appalling.
of go, what?
It's just appalling. A man's just been shot in the neck, live on video, and they were talking about how he was an agent provocateur, how he was a divisive figure in American politics. And you're like, if you know, for goodness sake, the man at the time was in hospital.
Yeah.
You know, he was losing his life.
Yeah.
As these like commentators are live on TV talking about what a dangerous figure he is. You know, there's no introspection whatsoever. They would never say that about someone on the left.
No.
They would never say that. You know, I don't think if anyone on the right said that, we would all come out and say, how dare you say that?
Of course.
You know, but they think because they're the good people.
It's a horrible, horrible thing. And I mean, funnily enough, his last tweet was about the Ukrainian girl who'd been murdered on the subway train, and you know that's already also caused a lot of division in America, because a lot of people who should know better, frankly, have been saying, oh well, no, it's not racially motivated. You know, a crazed, you know, individual, regardless of his colour, has stabbed her to death. But as he stabbed her to death, he said, you know, I got the white girl. Yeah. You know, well, it is a racial thing. Exactly,
and I think you mentioned at the beginning of the show, you know, the assassination of JFK, the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going to be thinking to that period of American history and the kind of political danger that was involved in that, and going, well, Donald Trump was very nearly assassinated last year. You know, if he had not turned his head while speaking at Pennsylvania to a rally during the election, he also would have died. And so I think, you know, we've got to take a step back here and go, you know, what's going on in America? This is a very, very dangerous time.
It really is. Let's go across now to America itself. Caroline Ballard is Assistant News Director at KUER, NPR in Utah. Caroline, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Good evening here.
Thanks for joining us. I know it's probably been a very busy night for you. From what we understand, the assailant, the shooter, is still at large, which is kind of surprising in a way, because normally speaking, you know, the federal agents are pretty good at picking these guys up. But I'm assuming there wasn't that much security at this particular event.
So what we've heard is that there was security. Charlie Kirk came with his own security team, and that there was a police presence at the university, or at Utah Valley University. So we know there was some presence there. From what we can tell, the shot rang out from, they indicated, from the roof of a building. So that's what we know so far. And as far as people of interest, there were 2 suspects taken in to custody that were questioned and were ultimately released. Neither of them were determined to be the shooter. So yes, still at large, still a manhunt happening in Utah County, south of here. Right,
because we watched last night an individual seems to be being held on the ground by the cops. He looked like a sort of an older white man. He's obviously not the guy, but he was one of the original suspects. So I mean, what sort of speculation, or if not speculation, facts have the police come up with?
So far, not much. We haven't heard much in the way of updates. That was the last thing that we heard, was that the person of interest, I think the first person of interest was named George Zinn. That was the older fellow that you might have seen in some of those photos. The second person was the person they identified in a press conference as having taken in and were questioning. That was Zachariah Qureshi, and they ultimately released them as well. So yes, that's about the latest that we have. As of right now, they have said that they don't believe there is a greater threat to the public here. They feel like this was a targeted act. So the manhunt continues, but all of the shelter in place, all of those sorts of things have been lifted. And of course, we're nearing midnight here in Utah, so you know, who's to say what's happening on the ground down in Utah County right now, but it does still continue, and they're still searching.
Okay, Caroline, thanks very much indeed. Caroline Ballard there, Assistant News Director at KUER at NPR in Utah. Let's have a look. We've got some footage here which is slightly distressing, so be careful if you don't want to watch this, but this is the moment when Charlie Kirk was shot.
Counting or not counting gang violence? Great.
Basically, you hear the shot going out. I mean, there are other pieces of footage which are quite upsetting, which are closer up than that. I'm not going to play those because I don't want people to see them, but I'm sort of in shock, really.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree.
And I'm never in shock. I'm just not.
Yeah.
But I am today.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, it's the graphic nature. It's when the first reports came out, I remember thinking, I don't believe this. Surely it's fake. I'm sure it's a hoax. And then I did go on social media, and I did unfortunately see the graphic footage. So I would warn people, just be aware that video is circulating. It's just to have a figure. I mean, I've known Charlie Kirk for years. He's so big amongst the younger people on the right in the UK and in the US. He's someone that a lot of people would have grown up with, being like so influential to their political development.
Right.
To then see his life be taken, again, just doing his job, it's just appalling. And I think it's the right thing that Donald Trump did actually then address the nation about what's happened, because I think many other people will be feeling in that state of shock at the moment and going, like, what on earth is happening to our country? That this sort of thing is apparently becoming normalised. And again, I mentioned Donald Trump was nearly assassinated. There was another figure on the right who was nearly assassinated recently. There are constant attempts of swatting, which is when people call SWAT teams on people they disagree with. And there have been people who actually died from that practice. I think we really need to turn the temperature down because it cannot be normalised or equivocated in any way what's just happened to this person.
And I was talking to somebody just this morning in the office here who said, Farage has got to be careful.
Yeah.
But why does he have to be? That's the thing that really upsets me. Why should he have to be careful? Harry Cole, yesterday, who did an amazing job interviewing Peter Mandelson, and we'll talk about Mandelson in a minute because, that is still a massive story as well on the front pages this morning. Here's what Harry Cole had to say last night about Charlie Kirk.
America mourns a patriot, Charlie Kirk, a man who built a movement with words, ideas and conviction, cut down by a coward's bullet. He'd not done anything wrong. He'd not lifted a finger in anger. Yet here he was targeted because he did the best at what he did, giving a voice to millions at once, too afraid to speak out. An assassin's bullet struck him in the throat in the Utah College debate today was a sinister reminder that the enemies of freedom are around us all. It's the ugliest politics since President Trump himself was branded the greatest threat to the order and shot because of it. Is Charlie's death now the natural destination in a world where everyone you disagree with is a Nazi or a racist, or you assassinate a CEO and become an overnight left-wing pin-up?
I mean, it is quite extraordinary, and as I say, I mean, my own, and it's not obviously because of this at all, but he had retweeted something that I did, an interview with Katie Lamb a little while ago about the story about Afghan refugees or Afghan, I don't know, citizens being brought into this country secretly. That story that we had some months ago, or some weeks ago. And he said this, he retweeted the clip of me and Katie Lamb talking on the show, and he said the UK just secretly flew 24,000 Afghans into the country and made it illegal for the press to even cover the story, because they did. And he goes, now it turns out all of them get free housing and welfare for the rest of their lives without ever having to work. Doomed country. And he's right. That's where we are.
Well, also note that he's talking about the freedom of the press. I mean, this is someone that really genuinely cares about freedom of speech. Like, that is really what he's most known for, being a free speech activist. I noticed as well Harry mentioned the Luigi Mangione, who was the left-wing shooter of a health industry executive in New
Yes.
York who was being like presented like some kind of pin-up.
Yeah.
People were making art of him as a
Women
a
were
Catholic
going,
saint.
oh, how hot is he? Right?
Yeah. People were making memes about him. You know, this is the outcome of when you glorify political terrorism. Seriously,
Yeah.
I mean, it really is that serious. It's not funny.
No.
These aren't jokes anymore. These are people's lives, and again, I just feel we've got to focus on this is very, very dangerous time to be a conservative in America. It really is. And people need to think before they speak.
And we have to be careful it doesn't spread to this country because things tend to do that, don't they?
Exactly. And I think if you are on the left in the UK, think very carefully about what this lesson that you can take away from this tragic moment really is. You know, let's dial down the rhetoric. You might disagree with someone, okay, but we have free speech in this country still, just about, and we've got to hold on to that and we've got to preserve it.
And isn't it funny how it's the left who seem to be the ones who want to shut people down, you know, because you and I would be regarded as on the right, I suppose. You know, I'll have anybody in here if they want to talk to me about, you know, whatever their beliefs are, and we can have an argument and we can have a debate about it, as Charlie Kirk would do, you know. But if you're on the left, you want to, like, expunge people from the room. You want to kick them out. You want to give them no platform.
Yeah, well, note the difference, right? Where the right will say, like, oh, you know, this person's a muppet, let's all have a laugh at them, they're wrong. Whereas the left will say this person's dangerous. You know, what you're saying is dangerous. This person's a fascist, this person's a Nazi. And that is not the same thing, okay? One of those things is taking the mick out of someone, which is a long tradition in this country, and it's a good thing. And the other is you know, it's borderline incitement. When you have so many nutters out there nowadays, and you really do have so many nutters.
There are.
And in America, some of those nutters have access to rifles. It's just appalling. It's
awful. Will Kane, Fox News host, is here paying tribute to Charlie.
As I just mentioned, Charlie Kirk has died at a hospital in Utah. At the risk of sounding repetitive, Charlie Kirk was an incredible man. Charlie Kirk was a good friend, not just to me, for anyone who holds a microphone and anyone involved in politics, anyone he came into contact with. You'll hear it repeated on numerous occasions that Charlie Kirk was my friend. And that doesn't make either any one of us unique. It makes Charlie Kirk unique, because every single one of us would get a text, would get a direct message, would get a call from Charlie, encouraging us, congratulating us, complimenting a conversation or a segment. In a business that is full of ego, in a business that is full of competition, Charlie Kirk was a true friend.
And that's also quite an important point, isn't it? Because there are people on the right, let's not pretend, who are grifters, who do, you know, wind people up and who do kind of, you know, manufacture arguments and you know, spats for nothing other than their own benefit. You know, and that doesn't make them wrong in particular, but it makes it such a complicated picture, doesn't it?
Well, this again, he was the real deal, and I think as that NPR journalist that you just speaking to, I think pointed out, this is a targeted assassination. This was not random.
Somebody's on a roof, right? That means they put some work into
serious planning,
figuring out where the best angle is, working out where they can shoot them from, and all of that.
Also, the fact that, like, when he was shot, he was answering questions about free speech. That was literally, he was mid-conversation about free speech. And, like, you know, maybe that's a coincidence, but I don't know. I mean, this is someone who's clearly put time into planning their target, when to strike, where to strike. I hope they are found and apprehended very quickly and we can get some answers. Because, again, I think a lot of people are going to be very frightened today. Even if this person isn't a threat to the wider public, you know, this is clearly a very dangerous and unhinged individual. You know, we just cannot accept stuff like this happening. It's unbelievable. This should not be happening in 2025.
We can't normalise it.
No,
we really can't. Let's have a look at Charlie Kirk talking at the Oxford Union about Britain.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here tonight. Thank you to the Oxford Union for inviting me. I never went to university. I take that as a great compliment. So therefore, everyone who went to university should be able to run circles around me. You'll be the judge, but I'll do my best. Has Donald Trump gone too far? Well, I can nitpick at how vague that question is. What is too far, exactly? Are his tweets too long? Can all of us even agree on what we're aiming at? I don't think so. The truth is this. If you dislike the West and if you hate the West's values, if you think the West is evil fundamentally and deserves to be destroyed, then anything Donald Trump does basically short of surrender will be too far for you.
And that is an interesting point as well, isn't it? Because we have reached this kind of peak point of what I would call, you know, sort of undergraduate outrage about the world in which we all live, and they live in it, they benefit from it, they love the things that make life easy for them, but they sort of hate it at the same time because they're so comfortable. I really struggle with that.
Well, I think as well, though, you know, Charlie, again, he made his career by talking to people on college campuses, by going to speak to university students, because I think he realised, and he diagnosed before a lot of other people, that was where the free speech crisis was really happening. Like, that was where you're starting to see the turn towards liberalism, these kind of cozied up students. He never had their worldview, but you know, I really do recommend people go watch that whole speech. It is fantastic. He is such a good communicator. He actually gets a standing ovation, and again, this is from a group of students who do not really agree with him, the vast majority of him, but because he's just so eloquent. And he's so down to earth. But as he said, he didn't go to college. This is someone who just he learned how to speak by actually going out there, talking to people, kind of like honing his craft, going all across America, speaking on liberal campuses, speaking on conservative campuses, going abroad, speaking in the UK, speaking at our universities. You know, and again, I hope this is a bit of a wake-up call. This is what people are fighting for when they fight for free speech. Like, this is what it means. He has now unfortunately become a martyr for the cause of free speech, which is again, just, it's awful. But that's really what he is, and I hope we can remember him as the brave man that he was, for doing things that very few people have the guts to do nowadays.
And for people who would in some way, I don't know, give a reason as to why he was controversial, because I'd love to hear from anyone who thinks he was. I don't think he was. I don't think that he said anything which wasn't in any way kind of just common sense. I mean, he used the phrase common sense, is what we use here, the home of common sense. You know, he doesn't appear to me to be particularly extreme. He doesn't appear to have said anything which would be considered radical, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, maybe I'm just out of touch. But, you know, for someone to feel so strongly about him that they have to kill him, you can't take it in, really.
Well, I got a text last night when the news was rolling in from a friend of mine who's close within MAGA circles, and he was saying, like, Charlie was the guy who believed in, like, open debate. You know, he was very much, like, within MAGA circles, he was definitely one of the more moderate ones. He was, like, small C conservative. I think a lot of people within MAGA now are not going to be as obliging as him, you know, and they're not going to be as open-minded and wanting to have conversations with leftists and liberals, because they're going to be going, like, you people stand for political violence. Like, why are you guys not condemning political violence? I hope that's not the case, because I don't think that's what Charlie would have wanted.
There were people last night on social media, American sort of, you know, what you might call sort of crazy Democrats, you know, more or less saying he brought it on himself, you know, he blamed, you know, he of course somebody shot him because he was so outrageous. It's like, well, sorry, what world are you living in?
Well, as well, I saw someone saying, oh, well, people don't talk enough about what's happening in Gaza, so why should I care about Charlie Kirk? I mean, what a ridiculous thing to say. What a ridiculous thing to say. We just see someone be shot in the neck while he was speaking to a crowd of students when his wife and his kids were in the crowd. And because we didn't immediately bring up all the other suffering that's happening in the world, we're not allowed to mention it. I mean, it's just such a perverse worldview.
It really
it's so
is.
ridiculous.
So ridiculous. Let's do one final clip before we break, because I'm running late. I'm going to get told off. This is what he said himself on what he does best.
I go around universities and have challenging conversations, and because that's what is so important to our country, is to find our disagreements respectfully, because when people stop talking, that's when violence happens.
I've never seen someone do this.
Well, it's a growing trend because people like me are facing violence, assault, the left. Yes, the campus Antifa. I've been stormed out of restaurants. I've been assaulted publicly, multiple death threats.
Okay, so what's your goal in all this?
There's more people that agree with me than some people would actually believe, and they come out of the woodwork when I do stuff like this. We record all of it so that we put on the internet so people can see these ideas collide. When people stop talking, that's when you get violence. That's when civil war happens, because you start to think the other side is so evil and they lose their humanity.
And, you know, and now he's dead.
Yeah.
Awful. We've got lots more to talk about. It's 29 minutes past 6. Bobby Coburn's here from the Telegraph. Charlie Kirk is dead. Somebody has killed him. He's been assassinated, effectively. He is a victim of the ridiculous culture wars that we are now dealing with every single day both here and in the United States. And something's got to be done. Surely to God. This is Talk.
That's, you know when there's always sort of something lurking in the background from, how can they just go, right, it's just like a mum and a father and son meeting, there's been some bad blood, how do we then just sort of get it out in the open? And that's what is needed. But and it is probably a relief that actually there's no Meghan lurking in the back, when he goes back to his hotel tonight. Okay, he might get on the phone to her and talk to her about it, but hopefully that's where it will end.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:32. I'm Mike Graham. It is a very sad morning as we discuss what on earth is happening to America and how Charlie Kirk has been assassinated for his own political beliefs and for talking about free speech. But Poppy Coburn's here from the Telegraph. Poppy, some other really, really big stories that we have to talk about as well, including, of course, Peter Mandelson. A lot of the newspapers, probably largely because it happened a bit late for them, are leading on this. Fight on, Mandelson told jailed Epstein. This is an email that was laid bare last night, where it looks as though not only did Peter Mandelson know that he was a convicted paedophile, but he actually told him that, you must fight on because I can't believe you're being persecuted in this terrible way. I mean, it's just the extraordinary stuff. Front page of the Daily Mail, now Mandelson must be fired. Chorus of cross-party fury as emails show UK's ambassador told Epstein, your friends love you, fight for early release. I mean, it's hard to believe, isn't it? If you're in the front page of the Sun, Mandy's job on the brink, Mandelson on brink over leaked emails with Epstein. I mean, Keir Starmer has got to be the worst judge of character in the history of the world, hasn't he? I mean, absolutely. I mean, there it is in black and white. We've all seen the photos. We've known for a very long time that Peter Mandelson had some kind of a connection with Jeffrey Epstein, a friendship of some kind. But these emails are just appalling. I mean, there is no way of saying,
I didn't know the man's character.
Right.
There's no way of saying, well, it was a long time ago. It doesn't matter if it was 20 years ago.
Right.
You know, you do not send an email to a man who is at that point just being convicted of child sex offences, saying, don't worry, we will back you. I love you.
I love you, and I'm staying in your flat in your big townhouse in Manhattan while you're in prison for trying to procure sex from a child.
Yeah.
You're going to go, what?
I mean, we know Mandelson is sort of a good judge of character. I think he's shown that before, but this has got to be the worst one yet. I mean, it really is unacceptable. And you know, I thought his placement in this role in the first place was mad. Again, I mentioned earlier on the show, I was out in the US for the inauguration, and I remember I was at some of the parties and I was talking to the Americans there, and I mentioned Peter Mandelson. I was like, oh, Peter Mandelson coming in. Oh, yeah. What do you think about that? And they were like, what, the pedo guy? Like, seriously.
Guy.
And I was like, oh, so that's great. So that's what our closest ally thinks of Peter Mandelson's place. I mean, look, I'm no suggestion that Peter Mandelson's done anything wrong himself. Right. But like we really need someone there in that role, like Karen Pierce, who had a very close friendship with Donald Trump. Who
was originally who Trump wanted to stay in the job, right?
Yeah, he loves that. I've heard reports that they still call each other, actually, and talk about UFOs, which is, you know, to be a fly on the wall in that conversation. Yeah. But Peter Mandelson is not popular with Donald Trump. He's a toady. Yeah. You know, he's been constantly saying that we need to get closer to Donald Trump, but, you know, that's just Mandelson being Mandelson. He's slimy as you like.
And you can see the sort of dynamic between him and Trump, can't you? When he was in the Oval Office, when Starmer was there, and he was sort of standing in the background, sort of rubbing his hands like Uriah Heep. It was kind of like, oh, God, the oil's dripping off him, even as we look at him, you know?
Sneaky Pete. Pete, that's what he calls him.
Oh, Petey.
Yeah.
He was called by Epstein, right?
You know, Donald Trump rarely gives you a nickname if he likes you. I'll put it that way. It's Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden know it all too well. But, you know, the reports in the Times today that Starmer's refusing to sack Mandelson, I mean, we partly know what that is. That's because there's a state visit next week, and, you know, it's going to be a hell of a scandal if he's not there. But then also I was thinking last night, if he doesn't sack him, every single question from the press is going to be, why is Peter Mandelson, who has connections with the disgraced financier, paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, still in this position?
Because it's not as if, you know, anyone's accusing Peter Mandelson of being a paedophile. It's just he's associated with a man who is convicted as a paedophile. Yeah. It's as simple as that. So when they refer to him as the pedo guy, that's because it's a kind of it's a nom de plume, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's proximity to disgrace and political scandal. And, you know, whenever you become the story, we saw this with Sue Gray, you know, way back when. That feels like ages ago. It was only a year ago.
It does feel like ages ago.
Doesn't it? You know,
the woman who was planning the first 100 days but only lasted 93. Hard to believe.
You know, people said there were no signs that the Labour government was going to fall apart, but that was a big one of them, wasn't it? Right. But she became the story, she became the scandal, and she had to go. I can't see how it's going to be any different.
I can't see it. I mean, do you think they're just holding on to him until Donald Trump comes for his state visit next week, and then somehow he'll be let go? Because if he's let go now, it looks really, really terrible.
Well, that might be their intention, but, you know, Peter Mandelson is not going to go out without a fight. He's been briefing to the Prime Minister, oh, it's going to look really bad if your enemies get another political scalp. You know, you've got to keep me in, you need my expertise. You know, he's certainly been in the game for a very long time. I mean, how he has survived this many scandals and keeps coming back for more.
It is amazing. Let's have a look at what because this, see, for me, I think this reflects also really badly on Keir Starmer, because he has given him his full backing without realising that there might be other stuff that comes out in the next 48 hours. Let's have a look at Prime Minister's questions yesterday.
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of child prostitution and sex trafficking that took place between 2002 and 2005. That is the precise period which Lord Mandelson called Jeffrey Epstein his best pal. Absolutely. Was the Prime Minister aware of this intimate relationship when he appointed Lord Mandelson to be our ambassador in Washington?
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship.
So apparently it's okay as long as you express your deep regret that you didn't realise he was a paedophile, that even though he was in prison when you stayed in his house, for procuring child prostitutes, you didn't realise that that was a bad thing. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. It's quite breathtaking, actually, that Keir Starmer can be this tone deaf, because he's had a pretty bad week, right? Let's not forget, it was only a week ago Monday that he relaunched the parish tool of his, parent project. Yeah, and then Tuesday he had his first cabinet meeting where he talks about, we're now talking about renewal, we've fixed the foundations and now we're moving on. The guy's either completely deluded or just a massive liar.
Yeah, I think Rachel Reeves' face in that PMQ said it all, really. Like, where the hell am I? What is going on? Right. I mean, it's just scandal after scandal after scandal. I never said this before, but, this is the sort of thing you expected from the Tories year 14.
Yeah, right.
When everything was starting to fall apart.
Yeah.
Like, let's not forget, the government has only just come into place. They've only been in power for just over a year. And yet, so he's lost his Deputy Prime Minister and had to hurriedly replace him with David Lammy, who's, I'm sure, going to do a fantastic job in that role.
Very much a poor man's replacement, you have to say.
Yeah, quite.
I was saying at the weekend, you imagine the scene of the sort of Admiralty Arch where, Angela Rayner's watching us then pull the £7,000 beds out and move the other, really crappy stuff in for David Lammy. What an awful situation.
Yeah, I mean, he's losing all of his close allies. He nearly seemed to lose his Chancellor. He obviously lost Sue Gray. Mandelson's on the brink. I think Morgan McSweeney, who had quite a close relationship with Mandelson and apparently was quite heavily involved in him getting that job in the first place, is also slightly on the rocks. He's upset so many people on the left of the party or the centre of the party. If he loses those close allies around him, I think it's time to start asking the question, can he survive to the end of this
think he
parliament?
can. I think that question is being asked, and it has been being asked. I mean, I've been asking it since about last August, and people kept poo-pooing me and saying, no, you don't know what you're talking about. They can't de-seat a sitting Labour politician. There is no mechanism to do so, to get rid of a Labour Prime Minister. Well, guess what? There will be, because people have now realised that he is actually the worst politician and worst Prime Minister that we have ever had. And it's time to get rid of him before he completely destroys the entire country.
I mean, I think people usually will say, well, who's going to replace him? Who's going to come up? But surely anyone is going to be better than Keir Starmer. I mean, he's just a rubbish people manager.
He's awful.
He cannot get his own MPs on side. He had to back down on that welfare bill just because he apparently wasn't even calling people. He wasn't talking to them. Regardless of the merits of that, and I think that was the right thing to do at the time, if you're not even having communication with your MPs and you've just won them all a job, you've got this massive majority, you're just a bad politician.
Well, people say that, regardless of whether you liked him or not, Tony Blair, even Jeremy Corbyn would go into the sort of the tea room in the House of Commons and sort of mingle with people and talk to them and, chat to them and see what their concerns were, or they walk through the lobby. And he doesn't even do any of that. And so when people say, oh, but he's really not a very good politician, he's a manager, but he's not a good manager either.
He's not a good manager.
He's got nothing really going for him. Let me just read you a couple of these. The one from Damon in Wigan. I'm in shock about the death of Charlie Kirk. I've always told it how it is, and I'm classed as right-wing. However, everyone has the right to discuss things without fear of thinking something's going to happen to me. It's the left who are the threat to the world, not the right. Dan says in Lingfield, the reason the left are getting violent is because they are losing the argument. End of. But I think it's right to say, and I'm not going to say this lightly, people will be waking up this morning. I mean, Jeremy Clarkson's put a tweet out overnight saying, for the first time in my life, I'm scared to be a newspaper columnist. Because suddenly, it's real. There are people out there with guns who want to kill you because they don't agree with you. It's frightening.
It's not hyperbole, I don't think people now agree to disagree. I think the stakes have just been put so high where every little disagreement is now it's not just that I disagree with you, I think you're wrong. It's I think you are a bad person, you are a threat, you're a danger. And there are going to be nutters out there. There's a lot of people out there, and a small proportion of them will be insane and will go, OK then, if this person's a threat, then I need to do something about it. And I hope that in the UK we don't have that. I really, really hope that we don't get to that point. But I'm not that optimistic.
No,
anymore.
exactly. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, you write regular columns in the Telegraph. Some people might disagree with some of the things you say. Are you supposed to walk out the Telegraph office every night and look around and see whether somebody is going to jump you? I mean, it's awful. This from Steve in Yorkshire. I was watching last night as it happened. I was so shocked and upset. I followed Charlie and loved the debates. He did. It was all about free speech. Thanks for everything you do. And Jess in Dover, this assassination is the end game of cancel culture. There are a lot of people who genuinely believe the end justifies the means. They fail to win the argument. Listen, we're running terribly late. It's coming up to 6:44. I'm Mike Graham. Poppy Coburn is here. We'll be back after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory at 6:46. Poppy Coburn's here from The Telegraph. We're going to have a quick hit with a couple of guests here. Matthew Bartlett, Republican strategist and former State Department appointee, and Roxanne Hoge, who's the chair of the Republican Party in Los Angeles. Matthew, Roxanne, welcome to Morning Glory. Thanks for joining us. It's a very dark day, as Donald Trump has just described it, Matthew. How have we got here? I mean, I know it's a difficult question to answer, but how on earth have we got here?
Yeah, Mike, good morning. From Washington, a town, a country, and arguably an entire political system that has just been shaken to its core. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, as you and Poppy have said, someone who is engaged in civic debate, kind of a Socrates-like figure in American culture and politics, gunned down, silenced, killed for his words and his thoughts. This is an abhorrent act of political violence, of political terrorism, that just cannot be tolerated in American society. So it's just a tragic moment right now. How we got here, where we go from here, all critical questions. Right now, I think we are in mourning, and I think we need to realize and recognize that, again, public debate is welcomed. It's a tenet of our American society, the First Amendment, but the political violence is increasingly pervasive in politics, problematic, and needs to be absolutely, utterly condemned.
Of course. Roxanne, I've asked the question already, how did we get here? How do we get out of this situation? How do we fix and heal the nation?
The horrible irony is that how we get out of it is by doing exactly what Charlie Kirk was doing right when he was gunned down. He was engaging people in conversation. And that is the surest path to, by the way, the attack, Matthew, is not just on America, but on Western civilization itself. If we can't have disagreements and discuss with each other, and by the way, very spirited terms, the Oxford debates are always wonderful and passionate and hard fought. But if you cannot do that, then we're in deep trouble. And the left for over a decade has been saying their speech is violence, and also their violence is speech. So that's how we got here. And the only way out of it is for the radical left, AKA the Democrats, but I repeat myself, to completely and totally disavow it, because it's coming from inside their house.
Yeah. And Matthew, in terms of the chilling effect that this will have on free speech, I mean, will it frighten people into not going out there and joining the crowd, or will it stop people from organising debates and going out into the public sphere?
You know, Mike, I think that is the intent, very sadly, but I believe that, as just mentioned, no. How do you answer that? How do you answer madness with soundness, with continuing to engage in those debates with logic, with reason, to make an argument but not get into an argument, and that now is the time where, again, 2 attempts on Donald Trump's life. We've seen this countless, too many times, and there needs to be just a rejection. Happy to see leaders from both parties, all living presidents, making comments today, again, celebrating the life and the rights of Charlie Kirk, and really deploring this murder, this political violence, this political terrorism. We are now, on the anniversary of 9/11, where again terrorism struck. Was meant to drive fear and to stop people from living a free life in a free and open society. You would hope that once again our country will continue to affirm what is right and renounce what is wrong.
Matthew, thank you very much indeed. Roxanne, just a final word from you. It is the anniversary of 9/11. It's hard to believe that, all these years later, we're still suffering from terrorism, but on our own shores, indeed.
I think because I live here behind the blue curtain in Los Angeles, California, I hate to inform you, but I, even as the chairman of the local Republican Party, I can't have a Republican bumper sticker on my car. It's not been safe for people on the right to express themselves for a very, very long time. And while it's nice to have those words from Obama and other leaders of the Democrat Party, they ring hollow for me, because they're the ones who told people, Maxine Waters, if you see people in a restaurant, don't let them eat in peace, get in their faces. There's been a lot of soul searching that has to happen on the left.
Of course. Roxanne, listen, we're all thinking about you. Thank you very much indeed. Thinking about America and thinking about what needs to be done to fix it. Poppy, we've had the same thing here, haven't we? We had the Labour government or Labour Party apparatchiks talking about, you know, don't let Tories enjoy themselves, don't let them walk amongst us, you know, disrupt them wherever they go, get in their faces. I mean, it's a horrible thing.
Yeah, it's also completely pathetic.
Yeah.
These are people who want to try and you know, LARP as being like anti-fascist, you know, brave campaigners. They're not being brave. It's actually the easiest thing to do in the world, to punch right. You know, it's totally easy to do so, particularly if you're in left-wing spaces. And again, you know, what's happened to Charlie Kirk is just yet another tragic reminder that these words have consequences. You know, they really, really do. I am the biggest free speech advocate going. I don't want to censor anyone. I don't want to shut down anyone, regardless of what they say. But people do need to be aware that if you create an environment where you point to some section of society and you say, you are the enemy, you are dangerous, you know, you are not like me, that can have some consequences. And so just to be aware. And, you know, I think in the US it's even, unfortunately, further along. The polarisation there is so deep. You know, that people can't dive across the divide, they can't even have a basic conversation about politics. I really hope the UK doesn't come in that direction. But, you know, look at how people talk about reform.
I know.
Well,
like I say, John McDonnell yesterday likening Nigel Farage to Hitler.
It's ridiculous. I mean, that is ridiculous.
Laughable, but not laughable this morning because of what happened yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've just got to go to these people and remind them that their words do have consequences, and they're not speaking in a vacuum. You know, because it's just completely wrong. It's ridiculous to say that about Charlie Kirk. It's ridiculous to say that about Nigel Farage. These are, you know, public-spirited people who believe in free debate. You know, if that's something that we're attacking people for now, then, you know, we're screwed.
I know, absolutely. Poppy, stay where you are. We're almost out of the hour, but it's 6:53. We've got to talk about Prince Harry yet, who went and saw his dad yesterday for the first time in several months. We'll bring you more on that coming next.
Jeffrey Epstein was in prison for relations with minors at the same time that Peter Mandelson was staying in his house. So, you know, you're telling me he didn't... Of course he knew where Jeffrey was. Of course he knew why he was in prison.
Right.
So, but still he decided to live in his house. Now, for most people, they would find that extremely odd.
I mean, this is it, that I was lied to. No, you knew what you were getting yourself into.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you, 6:57. It is, of course, Talk, the home of common sense. We've been talking about the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We'll keep going with that throughout the course of the show. Poppy Coburn's here from Telegraph. Poppy, just before the end of the hour, the other big story on the front pages today, lots of really, really big stories, is, of course, Prince Harry. Harry's tea with the King on the front page of The Sun. Royals reunite for the first time in 19 months. You forget how long that is. It's like, you know, a year and a half since he saw his dad, who's suffering from cancer. A bit of a dramatic moment yesterday afternoon when he was spotted going into Clarence House. Does it mean that everything's all right now?
Well, it was a very brief meeting. You know, the Daily Mail saying it was 54 minutes exactly. They caught up over a cup of tea. I think when you've got 6 years of recrimination and hurt, it's pretty difficult to deal with that in under an hour. You know, I think it's a good thing that they're meeting up again. Last time he was there, obviously, it was with tragic news because the King announced that he had cancer and he'd flown back from LA. Right. Is that enough to actually heal the rift in the family? I think, unfortunately, not. No. But you know, I still think it's a good thing, even regardless of what your views are on Prince Harry. You know, that's his dad, and he's got to have a good relationship with his dad. So yeah, I mean, it is good to see that they're meeting, but again, they're very brief. Yes.
The elephant in the room, of course, or rather not in the room, is Meghan Markle.
Yes.
And I imagine that that's always going to be difficult. I mean, as I'm sure you have, you occasionally have rows with your parents, and mine are both passed away now. But, you know, whenever there was an issue, you'd kind of go, should we go and have a drink? And you go, OK, then. Yeah. And it would always be a bit tricky. But, I mean, there was never anything as bad as this. No, no. I can't imagine you could probably cut the atmosphere with a knife.
Well, absolutely. I mean, as well, you're literally the king. Yeah. Everyone's kind of watching you. Everyone's kind of looking over you. You've got this packed schedule. Right. And, you know, I guess it's not easy to have a relationship if you're living in LA. That was obviously a choice of Harry. He did decide to do that because they'd had that major falling out. Doesn't seem to be much news that he's got a relationship with William either. No. That still seems to be very full.
Is a long way away from meeting him.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's probably quite difficult because, you know, he broke the omerta. He obviously wrote that memoir, Spare, where you kind of rake over the coals, the family dramas, and, you know, it's not easy. But I hope, for the King's sake, that they can have a relationship.
And as Jeremy Kyle said yesterday, let's hope that as much as we probably would like to know what happened, maybe Harry could do well not to actually reveal it to NBC as soon as he gets off the plane in New York. Poppy, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Difficult morning this morning, ladies and gentlemen, but we will bring you more coming up over the next 3 hours. This is Talk, back after the news.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs. People schmiggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash...
and he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, "I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source." Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work.
It's crap. It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels, and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling guns gang.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's Talk TV is the home of common sense. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7, and we bring you terrible news this morning about the assassination and the shooting death of Charlie Kirk, somebody who I suppose is best described as a right-wing polemicist, somebody who was an incredible human being, a young man at the age of just 31. He was out there in Utah, in the sort of west of the United States of America, talking to a bunch of students, talking about free speech, talking about how important it was to actually listen to people regardless of what their views were, regardless of whether you agreed with them or not, talking about whether or not they could move forward in America, which has become so polarised, rather like we have in this country, about the views of the left and of the right. Some people would categorise him as a MAGA supporter. Some people would categorise him as a Trump supporter. One of the biggest and most important voices for the young people of America, and one of the people credited with getting the Trump second term over the line. Donald Trump has described it today as a very dark day for America because Charlie Kirk was assassinated, shot with what can only be described as a high-velocity bullet. One bullet was fired, looks like from the rooftop of an adjoining building onto the stage where he was sitting. It's a horrific piece of video, and we're not going to keep replaying it, quite honestly, because I don't really want to see it. But there's an awful lot, as of course with everything that happens these days on social media, that you can see. The assailant apparently is still at large. The police arrested a couple of people who turned out not to be guilty of shooting him, and basically we're still finding out whether or not they can apprehend the man or woman responsible and bring them to justice. But unusually for America, they have still yet to find him. So we'll keep you updated with all of that. We're going to talk to Ellie Bufkin, a former Fox News producer. But I think America is in shock this morning. The UK is also in shock, it has to be said. And we're going to speak to Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, because this is where it goes. When people become so intolerant of each other that they cannot actually even abide living in each other's space. And where you become the enemy, not because you're a nasty person, not because you're a bad person, but because you've got an opinion that somebody else doesn't like. And it's really quite extraordinary. I'm quite upset this morning. Forgive me for occasionally welling up, because I will. Because at the end of the day, this is what we live and breathe to do. You know, talkTV was born out of Brexit. talkTV sort of became what it was as a result of people's views and about people's opinions. We gave people a voice. And there are those out there who would like to silence those voices, and there are those out there, certainly in America, who would kill you rather than listen to you. And I think that's a very, very sad place to be, and it's a very alarming place to be. Jeremy Clarkson has put out a tweet today saying for the first time in his life he's actually frightened of being a newspaper columnist because somebody might decide just to do away with him. Isn't that awful? Just horrendous, ghastly. Morning, Mike. This vile incident reminds me of the various incidents where people like Nigel Farage are attacked and those on the left fail to condone it. Debate and free speech is lost as when they have no argument, they resort to violence or call people Nazis, says Mark in Croydon. Absolutely right. And Robert in Hitchin says, morning, Mike. I woke up to the sad news about Charlie Kirk and I just don't know what to think anymore. What on earth has happened to the world and to free speech? I'm gutted for his poor family. It's awful to say, but I'm scared as to who will be targeted next. And that's the problem, isn't it? Let's get a voice note from Jay.
Morning, guys. Love the show as always. I can't go into too much detail because I've been thinking about it all night and I've actually struggled to sleep. I just want to give a big shout out to Charlie Kirk and his family and send them a lot of love. I weren't his biggest fan or anything like that, but I will turn around and say that someone has died for free speech. I never see him hurt anyone. I never see him attack anyone. He just debated people, and he was always up for a debate. And a few times, when he got it wrong, he would nod in that approval and say, I see what you're saying. You know, so he was constantly learning, but he hit people with facts, you know, and it's just such a shame that the left clearly wants to control the free speech. It has to be.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at what Charlie Kirk did do, because this was what his, you know, bread and butter was. Here he was at Oxford Union talking about Britain.
From my perspective, Britain is one of the greatest countries in the history of the world. You are the country of Shakespeare, the steam engine, and Adam Smith. You defeated Napoleon, you destroyed the slave trade, you stood up to Hitler. My country, America, became great as it is because of what we inherited from you, from Britain. When I hear the slogan, "Make America Great Again," I'm also hearing, quote, "Return America to its British roots." Great Britain has everything in the world to be proud of. But when I look at Britain today, I see a country where the ruling elites are in a race to abandon the very values, the values that made them so great in the first place.
That was Charlie Kirk speaking at the Oxford Union. Let's speak to Ellie Buffkin, a former Fox News producer. Ellie, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Mike. It's a very sad morning.
It's a really sad morning. How's America this morning?
You know, it's very early here, but, you know, as we went to bed last night, we were in shock. And I think that your listeners, your viewers this morning that you've just read and that voice note that we listened to reflects how we're feeling here as well. Charlie was beloved among certainly conservatives. But as you mentioned, he wasn't afraid to debate anybody. He was an inspiration in that he would look into the eyes of anybody who disagreed with him, no matter how virulent they were, no matter how far afield they were, and he would reasonably have a conversation with him. And I don't know who else would be a worse target to take down over free speech than someone who was so open to having these conversations and leading the charge.
Yeah.
So it's a very sad day indeed.
It really is. And watching some of the coverage last night, it was clear on social media certainly that nobody's learned anything though, because there were people being critical of him and, you know, saying he brought it on himself, you know, because of his views, because his views were crazy and he was wild and he was out of control. And I don't see any of that. I don't understand how anyone could say that.
I agree with you. I didn't see anything. That's one of the things that's really so terrifying that's happened, you know, in this country. And, you know, actually just returned from the UK and spoke with some people who work very closely in the media, and they say the same thing. But what we are seeing, especially on the left, the political left, is that people believe a certain narrative.
Yeah.
They believe that people like Charlie are calling for, imprisonment and killing of protected minorities, like the LGBT community.
Yeah.
They think that he's really said these things. They can't provide evidence that he has, because certainly he has not, but they believe it. And you've seen people who even condemned the shooting saying, well, you can understand why people are celebrating, though, because, he did say these things. But he absolutely didn't. And that comes from the top. These sentiments come from politicians. They come from people like Matthew Dowd, who was terminated from MSNBC yesterday after saying exactly that he brought it on himself, that he is a hateful figure, which wasn't true. And I'm glad that MSNBC ended up doing the right thing and making sure that, they weren't endorsing that type of speech. But
And one of the stories that, of course, Charlie focused on in his final hours of tweeting on social media was the horrible, ghastly murder, which everybody saw, of that Ukrainian young woman, Irania Zarutska, on a subway train, killed by a crazed man who happened to be black. But they didn't want to talk about the fact that he was black and the fact that it was a racial attack and the fact that, he shouldn't have been walking the streets because he was insane. And he'd been let go many, many times, I think 14 times out of prison by multiple liberal judges.
Yeah, that story is such a lightning rod. And it's an incredible moment here. And I think that we're finally coming to this realization. Even on the left, you see that people can look back and see the headlines depending on who's been killed, and see how much it matters. How much coverage a murder like George Floyd had versus this, poor woman in North Carolina who came to the United States to escape a war zone and was ultimately brutally murdered just for sitting down on a bus. And she was certainly attacked, for the color of her skin. That was said by the person. And I've heard this sentiment, and, I'll repeat it here. I'm sort of tired of people getting a pass just for being, quote unquote, crazy.
Yeah.
I think anybody who attacks somebody in broad daylight with a knife is crazy. He knew what he was doing. He left the scene after he attacked this woman. He was clearly well enough to understand that he wanted to get away from being caught.
Right.
This is the type of crime that happens because we're too afraid of being called racist to actually punish criminals and protect the people that are so vulnerable.
Yeah, it's a shocking state of affairs. Ellie, listen, my sympathies go out to everybody this morning in America, because I love America as a country, and it's just, I can't stand what's happening there. Thank you very much indeed. Let's have a look at what Charlie Kirk's final tweet actually was about that case.
On August 22nd, Irina Zarutska was stabbed to death on the rail system in Charlotte, North Carolina, by a savage career criminal.
This was one of the coldest, most senseless murders I've ever seen. She had no interaction with this guy whatsoever. She was sitting minding her own business, and he just takes out a knife and just decides to stab her. I do say this with some form of just heaviness. I don't like politicizing situations like this, but it just necessitates it because there are so many dynamics at play here. Based on the information evidence we have, the attacker did say, "I got that white girl." The attacker racialized it in his own telling of this situation. And we all know this. Any honest observer of your program knows this, including Van Jones even knows this deep down, which is that, of course, if a random white person on a subway took out a knife and stabbed a black girl senselessly to death, there would be massive media coverage, there would be policy changes, there would be people having to apologize for this. We saw this in George Floyd, and yet, for whatever reason, this situation has not garnered even a fraction of that kind of outrage or back.
A terrible situation in America, a country divided over free speech, over the truth of what's actually going on. Let's talk to Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Richard, very good morning to you.
Well, it's morning. I don't think it's a very good one for anybody, frankly, and our deepest condolences to obviously the family and friends of Charlie Kirk, an extraordinary individual. And yeah, it's just devastating in so many ways. This was a young man who was very significantly influential in helping the President of the United States be elected with such a majority, and who gave hope and to many people, and he gave license to talk about some issues which need talking about, and in a sense, many of us, both in America and here in the UK, have been smeared and labelled for wanting to talk about some of these difficult issues.
Sure. Well, I mean, it was only yesterday, and I think you were on with Jeremy Kyle yesterday afternoon, Richard, where John McDonnell, I don't particularly want to, even bring attention to him for this particular outburst, but he likened Nigel Farage to Hitler, said that, the Reform Party is a sort of crypto-fascist organisation, and this is where it leads.
Well, we're called that name in the House of Commons by Labour MPs pretty much every day, certainly every week now, and it is pretty extreme. I mean, I think this was a political killing, be under no illusion, and it will probably go down in history along the lines of the horrific killing of Martin Luther King in the late 1960s, and I think that that's how significant this is. But in a sense, the way to respond to it. For those of us who speak about difficult issues in the public eye is actually our legacy to Charlie Kirk is to keep talking about difficult issues, to make it legitimate to do so, and to ensure that we're not terrified or frightened to not want to talk about these things. And if you talk about some of these things in the open, then if it's a bonkers statement, then the disinfectant of sunlight will expose it as being bonkers. If it's got some merit to it and we need to learn from things, then likewise. And that's the whole point. And I think that's what people like Charlie Kirk were trying to achieve. And that is our legacy to his terribly shortened life, but his success is we have to continue to carry the torch, to carry the candle, and make sure that it shines bright in the spirit of free speech.
Yeah. Turning Point UK, who of course were associated with Charlie Kirk's organisation in the US, put out a statement a few hours ago and said to Keir Starmer, "Your Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy described us and Charlie as sinister forces and xenophobic. Other Labour MPs have protested with violent far-left activists who attacked us. The language your party and the wider left uses to describe people like Charlie and us is disgraceful." They're right, aren't they?
Well, what's extraordinary is we constantly get challenged by lefty, lovey-dovey media types every day, every week about be careful about your language.
Yeah.
And yet people like John McDonnell and the now Justice Secretary, recently sacked Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, are given a free pass to use all sorts of very extreme language. Now, that is part of free speech, of course, but it should be the case that you apply the rules consistently.
Yes.
And that's not what actually is happening. And consistent in every measure of the word and the process. So, yeah, it's truly horrifying, startling, and a massive wake-up call.
Absolutely. I mean, I watched you talking to Jeremy Kyle yesterday, Richard, on Talk yesterday afternoon, and I was much in admiration of you, actually, when you said, look, we don't cancel people for what they say. We don't believe in, saying that you can't say whatever you like. But, I mean, this morning, it obviously takes on a slightly different hue, doesn't it? I mean, do you worry about your own safety? Do you fear for your own safety at all?
There are moments, and there have been a few instances, but I think we just have to have the courage to push on. And I repeat, I think the legacy to Charlie Kirk is those of us who must push on and stand rock solid with that sort of foundation stone of free speech. That doesn't give you the right to incite violence or racism, anti-Semitism, to break the law, but it does give you the right to express and debate stuff. And I just think it's better to talk about difficult stuff in the open. If we talked about mass low-skilled immigration 10, 15 years ago and people's concerns, we might not be in the pickle we're in, but we weren't allowed to talk about it.
Right.
And so yeah, that's why it's important.
But here's where we are. I mean, Jeremy Clarkson put out a tweet. I mean, it's a few hours ago now, but he said, "For the first time in my life, I'm genuinely frightened about being a newspaper columnist." You know, that's awful, isn't it?
Of course, it's awful, and he's a very high-profile, very significant contributor and celebrity. It's terrible he feels that way. But,
it really is.
Yeah, my view is we've got to push on. We've got to do the right thing. And we've got to debate the important issues. And frankly, one of those is my call today that Lord Mandelson must either resign or be fired today, because what's been revealed yesterday by Harry Cole with regard to Lord Mandelson repeatedly and consistently supporting and expressing his admiration and love for Jeffrey Epstein. And some of the things that were revealed but have not obviously been sort of fully explored yet because of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I mean, Lord Mandelson literally said that to Jeffrey Epstein, he should use his conviction and jail as an opportunity, was the words he used, as an opportunity. I mean, this is just extraordinary language. Yeah.
Well, I mean, surely
he then expressed his love for a paedophile.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, in his first sort of a clip of the interview that we played yesterday morning, Peter Mandelson basically said, I was hoodwinked by this man. He was an albatross around my neck. He basically, you know, convinced me of something that wasn't true. And now that's completely been laid bare to be absolutely ridiculously wrong and a barefaced lie. Because on the front page of the Daily Mail today, he says to him, even as he was serving time in prison for convicted paedophile offences, your friends love you, fight for early release. He starts quoting The Art of War at him and telling him that, you know, he's going to have a strategy to come back and win the day. It's quite extraordinary.
And here's the next point, Mike. He then went on to say, this could not happen in Britain.
Right.
In other words, if you're a paedophile, you might get away with grotesque child prostitution and sex offences in Britain if you're powerful enough and know who to talk to. I mean, and of course, that's actually partly why, because of our sort of wokery, that the horrific child grooming gang scandals was allowed to continue for well over a decade, and regrettably is still going on. So, I mean, just extraordinary. A man who represents the United Kingdom as our ambassador in the United States, negotiating in the White House, thinks that somehow child prostitution can be got away with in the United Kingdom, and that a convicted sex offender should use it as an opportunity. This is not tenable.
It really isn't. And Keir Starmer now has also put himself out there for criticism, because he said in Prime Minister's Questions only yesterday that he has full confidence in the ambassador to the United States, as if he's given him a pass. He said, well, you know, he's issued a statement saying that he regrets his friendship with him. Oh, really? Well, sorry, that's not good enough. I mean, you know, Dan Hodges this morning, if Starmer can't or won't tell us what he knew about Mandelson, he should resign as well.
Well, he refused in the House of Commons to answer Kemi Badenoch's perfectly reasonable question whether Keir Starmer knew that Mandelson was involved in negotiating a £1 billion deal with Epstein after he had, I believe, been released from his first jail sentence. And this is, of course, the same Keir Starmer who failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile when he was Director of Prosecutions. And he now seems to think it's okay to defend basically a self-confessed pedo lover in Lord Mandelson.
Yeah.
That is what he is.
It's extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Richard, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, calling today for the resignation and the sacking, indeed, of Lord Mandelson as Ambassador to the United States of America. I don't see any way that Mandelson can stay in the job. You know, we said this last week, didn't we? We were sitting here just this week ago, and I said Angela Rayner's toast. There's no way she's going to survive. And it turned out, as indeed I always turn out to be right, she resigned on Friday around about midday. I would suspect that Mandelson would go the same way. I can't imagine it going any other way. Let's get a voice note from Kissy.
Hi Mike, Kitty from Kent here. I just wanted to say that I see the murder of Charlie Kirk as the extreme end of what is happening around the world, and especially in the UK, which is these rabid, intolerant, overeducated, underintelligent left wing who are a minority but have a majority voice, will not accept anybody's view other than their own, and they're supported by a majority media who just don't report what's really going on, and not least of all illustrated by our government mired in scandal, corruption, lies. Well, it's just endless really, and they're getting away with it. And it is a very frightening time, because at the end of the day, when these nutters stop getting their way, or they feel that you're winning the argument for speaking common sense and patriotism, they kill you. It's very, very worrying. Have a lovely day and stay safe.
Kitty, thank you very much indeed. Very, very sensible voice note as ever. You can send one in as well, 0344 499 1000. Michael in Hockley says, Mike, I agree with you. I also love America, and on 9/11's anniversary, it is tragic what has happened to Charlie Kirk. Sad times. Carol in Shoreham by Sea. Morning, Mike. What's happening to our world? Where has all this wickedness and violence come from? It's terrifying. I didn't know of Charlie Kirk, but I'm so shocked to hear of his assassination because of his belief in free speech. So very, very sad. Absolutely appalling. What right do these selfish people think they have to deny others from their views simply because they differ from their own? We need talk more than ever. Thank you. Carol, thank you as well. Yeah, it's a really, really sad day, not just for America, but for Britain and for free speech and just for opinion everywhere. You know, what we do here is we sell and buy opinion. And it's what we do. It's our business. Our business is opinion. You know, we want to hear yours. We want to hear other people's. We want to talk about things. We want to debate things. The idea that you get shot dead because somebody doesn't like what you think is so appalling, I can't even begin to tell you. But we'll keep going, and we won't stop, because this is what we do. It's Morning Glory. Back after this.
Basically, point of view from looking at the front of the car, driving down the street, and you've got to click a mouse when you see a developing hazard. So you see something moving ahead that, if you're driving, you may have to slow down for.
Right, okay.
You click the mouse as it's developing. So that's what that is.
So, even if it's a cyclist?
Well, if it could be a potential hazard to you, if you see a cyclist going down the road who may need to, I don't know, swerve to avoid a pothole, then that becomes a potential hazard.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:30 this morning. You are waking up to a terrible story from America about Charlie Kirk, a right-wing polemicist. I call him that because I think that's the best way to describe him, but he was a human being. He's been shot dead because of some of the things that he thought. Which is so appalling, I can't even begin to tell you. Mark in Selby says, Mike, what a sad day. Thank you, Charlie Kirk. You made me and the world think. Some people just do not like to think. They just act. As for Peter Mandelson, I'm sure Keir was just not across the briefs provided by our great security services. He was vetting PT, briefs which probably had the word no written in large red font on all the pages. Mandy cannot be at the state visit. It would be an embarrassment to the King and to this country. Absolutely right. How embarrassing. Meanwhile, in the background, we've been told yesterday we've never been closer to World War III than we are now, because, of course, we saw in the last couple of days Poland having to shoot down some drones that were sent into Polish airspace by the Russians, right? We're going to speak now to Katarzyna Skiba, a Poland editor of Euro News, because, of course, Poland has requested that Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty should be activated, which allows nations to call for urgent consultations, and it can lead to a joint decision on action or action on behalf of the alliance. Katarzyna, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice to talk to you. How is Poland this morning? I mean, yesterday, obviously, there were fears that something might escalate in a massive way. Nobody was very sure if the Russians had done it deliberately or whether they'd done it by accident, but certainly it looked like a bit of an escalation of the Ukraine war. What's the mood this morning?
The mood is definitely tense. This is obviously the first time that Russian drones have downed over a NATO country, which is a significant event. I think many Poles and many European defense ministers have seen this as a sort of test, not only for Poland, but also for NATO and for the West as a whole. It was only a few weeks ago that Poland's president, Karol Nawrocki, was inaugurated. And at that inauguration, the Polish defense minister, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, actually said that Poland is the first line of defense for the Western world, which means that for Poland and for Europe, as much as this is tense, it is also a wake-up call and a sign that what they have been doing in terms of ringing alarm bells about boosting European defense has been right. As a reminder, Poland is the largest contributor to NATO in relative terms. So everybody from NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte to even the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who chose to make his first ever state visit in office to Poland, have praised Poland for what it has done in terms of defense. So now, although the atmosphere is tense, I think people feel that this is a sign that what they have been doing is the correct course, and that they need to continue stepping up along with other Western allies.
Right. And what is the belief about what actually happened? Was it a deliberate provocative act by the Russians? Was it a mistake? What's the belief?
So the belief on the Polish side is that this was a deliberate test of the reaction. This is something that has been expressed by Poland's foreign minister, Radosław Sikorski, and some others on the Polish side. The German foreign minister also expressed a similar sentiment. However, you have some who believe, such as the Belarusian side, Belarus is an ally of Moscow, however, so it's important to take that into consideration, that these were simply jammed drones, as there was that same night a massive attack on Ukraine by Russia, where a total of 415 drones were shot out of Russia. And so the Belarusian side is stating that these were jammed drones that ended up flying into Polish airspace. Jammed drones crossing into Polish airspace and violating Polish airspace is something that has happened before. However, this has been something that has happened with maybe one drone or two, and not with 19, as we saw yesterday. And so this is also something that is kind of unprecedented in terms of scale, which is causing more concern.
Sure. And Polish airspace, I think, was closed yesterday. Is it open today?
Yes, it is open today. It has reopened, and a total of 4 airports, including the main Warsaw hub, so Chopin Airport, were closed.
Right. Okay. Well, we wish you very, very much luck. Katarzyna Skiba, Poland editor of Euronews in Warsaw, Poland. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Let's get a voice note from Perry on Peter Mandelson.
Morning, Mike. This doesn't look good for Keir Starmer. You know, at the end of the day, it might just be one of them things, but seems to be a link. You know, apparently, you know, when he was head of prosecutions, he didn't really do much to bring Jimmy Savile to trial. He refused to give an investigation into the child rape gangs. And now we find out that he's sticking up for Peter Mandelson, whose best friend was a convicted paedophile. But it doesn't look good on him.
It really doesn't. And Keir Starmer, once again, has made a massive, massive error by allowing this man to become the ambassador to the United States. I mean, we said it at the time. I remember saying before he was actually appointed, surely to God he won't appoint Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson, the man who's got more skeletons in his closet than Michael Jackson. Seriously. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Front page of the Mail, as I said, Mandelson must be fired. A chorus of cross-party fury as emails show the UK's ambassador told Epstein, your friends love you, please fight for early release. Front page of the iPaper, Mandelson on brink over leaked emails with Epstein. Fight on, Mandelson told jailed Epstein on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. It's absolutely unbelievable. Front page of the Times, Starmer refuses to sack Mandelson as US envoy. You can't keep getting away with this now. Starmer is a busted flush, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to tell you this, and mark it down, 7:37 and 15 seconds, Starmer will be out of a job by Easter of next year. That's my latest prediction. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 7:39, coming up to very nearly 8 o'clock in the morning. We're here, of course, until 10. Alex Phillips will be filling in for Julie Hartley-Brewer from 10 o'clock. Right now, let's move across to the migration debate. Anne Widdecombe is here, Immigration and Justice spokesperson for Reform UK. Very good morning to you, Anne.
Morning.
Lots and lots of stories this week about the state of our nation, whether or not we're moving migrants out of hotels into HMOs, whether or not we're converting hotels into HMOs. A big piece in The Sun today about Skegness, which has become a major battleground for migrants. I mean, it seems as though everywhere you turn, there's a story about how much this is all costing us. I think the Mail have got a piece today saying that lots of migrants arriving this week are going to cost us something like £44 million, practically just for the couple of thousand that have come in the last week since we got a new Home Secretary.
Indeed, and I think the crucial thing about this is that it's no longer a question of people who are just near where the small boats come in. It's everybody now in the country faces the possibility, or already has, a hotel which accommodates migrants in their community. If they move out into houses of multiple occupation, if they do that and they move out into flats, then they're going to be more scattered in the community. And people are just beginning to say now, with increasing emphasis, we want this sorted. You know, the governments have had long enough to sort it. Just get it sorted. And there's no sign of it.
There isn't. I mean, we saw various different Home Secretaries having a go at it. We had Priti Patel, we had Suella Braverman under the Tories. You know, we've now had Yvette Cooper, who's been moved on. We've now got Shabana Mahmood, who's apparently going to be tough on migrants and tough on the causes of migrants. I mean, it's all just rubbish, isn't it? It's nonsense. Apparently, her first day in the job, she saw, as I say, 1,097 of them coming over on Saturday of last week. And now we're being told that she's going to look at how best to stop the boats. Well, it's a bit late, isn't it? 14 months on?
Yes, it is a bit late. And when somebody says, you know, they're going to tackle not only the migrants, but the causes of migrants, I mean, you can just laugh at that. You know, I mean, presumably she's going to put an end to wars, or she's going to put an end to civil strife.
Yes.
She's going to put an end to all of this, you know, causes of migration. It is just nonsense. There's only one way you're going to deal with this. And this is what Reform's been saying for a long time. You need a deterrent.
Yeah.
You need the message to read. If you come to Britain, you'll be detained. You won't be free in hotels and flats. You'll be detained. You'll be refused because you come from a safe third country, which is France, and then you will be deported. Those three things. You will be refused. You will be detained. You will be deported. And yet the government still hasn't taken that on board.
But the trouble is, of course, that we now see not only do we have the ability to bring these people into the country, put them into hotels, but now it turns out 200 of the migrants are about to sue us because they didn't enjoy the time they had at the Mandelson detention centre, you know, because apparently it was inhumane conditions, and they've managed to find some human rights lawyers for whom we will pay for them to sue us.
Yes, well, that's another nonsense that Reform will stop. It is the actions of civil rights lawyers. Now, I've got no problem at all if a lawyer is taking on a genuine case. But when you're simply complaining about conditions at Mandelson, which, by the way, admittedly a long time ago, I have visited, when you're complaining about that, and, you know, your option was the tents that you were occupying in France, it is a patent nonsense, and that sort of thing has got to be stopped as well, and could be if the Home Secretary just adjusted the law. I mean, she can't do it on her own, but if she brought in the legislation to adjust the law, why don't they do it?
Well, it's a very good question. But, I mean, I find it amazing as well that they've had this kind of volte-face, because it was only a few years ago, probably when you were a Tory, where the Labour Party would say, it's absolutely outrageous to even suggest that we shouldn't allow all these people to come to our country. You know, we should be a sanctuary nation. We should be helping them to come here. They're poor, downtrodden, you know, bring me your poor, you're hungry, and all that sort of Statue of Liberty nonsense. You know, suddenly now they've all become rabid, you know, nationalists.
I mean, that's absolutely true. I mean, in the 1990s, when I was immigration minister, I was regularly abused as a racist by Labour, merely for wanting to control unlawful immigration. I mean, I wanted to do no more than that, and to control the abuse of the asylum system. So, yes, their rhetoric has changed, and it's changed under the pressure of necessity and, thank heaven, of public opinion. The public is no longer complacent about this, seriously worried, and it wants answers.
Yes, absolutely. Can I just ask you, Anne, before I let you go, about the shooting death of Charlie Kirk? Because I spoke to Richard Tice a little bit earlier on. You know, we live now in very febrile times, very dangerous times. I mean, why is it that people have become so intolerant of others' views? Because you and I have been around a few years, and you know, we've always had relatively robust conversations. But why are we suddenly now living in a world where not only do people dislike other people who don't agree with them, but they're actually willing to kill them?
I think to a certain extent we have always lived in such a world. You and I can probably remember, many viewers may not, we can remember the shooting of Ross McNutter on his own doorstep. This has happened before. In America, gun crime is not unknown. Sorry, I got a bug at conference. Is not unknown. So I think it isn't that it's vastly increasing. But what is increasing is the intolerance of social media.
Yeah, sorry.
Right.
Anne, listen, don't worry about it. Listen, I just wanted to get your view on that. Thank you very much indeed. Anne Widdicombe there, with a little bit of a morning cough. It's easily done. Sometimes, I forget sometimes how early it is that we do this show. It's only 7:46. I mean, there was a time when I used to be a normal person, before I did a breakfast show, that I wouldn't even be up at this point. You know, 10 to 8. What are you talking about? Why? When you expect to be sensible as well? Goodness gracious me. Let's get a voice note from Kieran on Peter Mandelson.
Mike, we live in a world where Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, backs the actions of a self-confessed paedophile lover. Peter Mandelson stated in the email that he loved Epstein. And how the hell, what world are we living in where that's happening, where that's going on? That's been the position, that's been defended. I mean, it's sick. We're at risk now of talking about it. We'll be considered to be far-right Nazis. Remember Ricky Jones said last year we should slit all their throats. That's the message from the left, isn't it? If they're losing the argument or they get caught out, it's threat and violence. And most of us are just moderate, calm dudes. I tell you what, we're getting close to having enough now, you know, and they might want to poke the bear too much more. All right, all the best, Kieran.
Kieran, thanks very much indeed. Let's have a look at what old Keir Starmer had to say yesterday when he was asked about Peter Mandelson.
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of child prostitution and sex trafficking that took place between 2002 and 2005. That is the precise period which Lord Mandelson called Jeffrey Epstein his best pal. Absolutely. Was the Prime Minister aware of this intimate relationship when he appointed Lord Mandelson to be our ambassador in Washington?
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship.
Well, that's good to know that he's playing an important part in the US-UK relationship, given that he told a convicted paedophile, basically, that your friends love you, you should fight for early release. I mean, seriously? Really? Is that what you think you should be standing up for, Mr. Keir Starmer, the so-called Prime Minister of this great nation of ours? That you're actually going to defend a guy who is an apologist for a paedophile? Really? Really? This from somebody who sent me on Twitter, from Jan Morgan. I'm not sure who Jan Morgan is, but as a message to Charlie Kirk's shooter. You are a coward who failed a mission. You hid in the shadows, pulled a trigger and ran. That's not justice, that's cowardice. You feared his words because they're stronger than your bullets. You didn't silence him, you proved his words have power. You didn't kill his voice, you amplified it. You didn't end the movement, you grew it. Charlie's fight is our fight, and we will never back down. What a brilliant thing to say. Coming up next, we're going to find out what's going on exactly behind the closed doors of Clarence House and the royal family. Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent, joins us.
some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
As something you can indulge in, as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:52. I'm Mike Graham. We should not let cowards with guns silence our ability to speak freely, says John. Quite right. And Barry says the recent rhetoric from John McDonnell should surely be considered as hate speech and incitement. Why aren't the police paying him a visit, says Barry. Good question. Philip from Fareham says, Mike, you said Starmer will be out by Easter of next year. I'm just going to delay it a bit to June the 1st. The elections in May will be the final straw. They will not just be bad, they will be a total wipeout for Labour, and that will do it for him. You could be right there. You could well be right. Interesting times. Tell you what was interesting yesterday, and amongst all of the major stories that were going on, this was even before what happened to Charlie Kirk happened, Prince Harry suddenly appeared at the door of Clarence House, and everybody said, wow, what's going on here? Is he going to be reunited with his dad? And so it turns out to be. 54-minute reunion over tea. The front page of The Sun says Harry's tea with the King. The first face-to-face chat for 19 months. Let's talk to Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent, to see what we can find out about what went on. Rupert, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you. I listened to you with some interest yesterday talking to Jeremy Kyle, and I saw that you both kind of went, we sort of want to know what's going to happen here. We sort of want to hear about it, but we also hope that Harry doesn't, spill his guts to NBC as soon as he gets on a plane in America.
Well, that is the big wish. As you say, 54 minutes. The King flew back. The sort of first inklings that something might happen was when the King was seen getting onto a plane at Aberdeen. He flies back. He's obviously spending most of his time now in Scotland, I believe, for a weekly cancer sort of treatment and update. And obviously, with Harry being in town, there was a way for them to have this 54-minute get-together over a cup of tea. Now, I suppose it's the green shoots of maybe opening up the relationship again.
Yes.
But as you do clearly say, and it has to be the case, that nothing from Harry's side comes out saying, oh, this, okay, he did say when he went to the Invictus Games function later that it was great, thank you. Well, that's a throwaway line. You don't need to read any, that's perfectly normal.
Right.
What we don't need is a sit-down interview with, or leaks saying, I don't know, the King spurns me again or something. Right. I don't know. Not that I'm saying that's going to happen, but we don't want to hear anything about this meeting to rebuild the trust for Harry and his father.
Yeah, and I mean, from what we understand, when he came over in his kind of capacity as a private citizen, if you like, he went off to do his stuff in Nottingham, and he went to a couple of charities, gave some money away to children in need. There was no suggestion they were going to meet up. So what do you think has happened to change, maybe perhaps, his father's view?
Well, maybe, in a way, this was kept deliberately quiet, because, as I said before, when Harry's tried to do that, maybe the King's diary has not got the opportunity to meet.
Yeah.
So, but we have known for some time that Harry is coming over, and maybe, as I say, this might have been just something that had been engineered before and quietly done, and that is exactly the sort of thing we need to happen. That I don't believe it would have been just I'm coming round now, I've got a window of opportunity.
Right.
King's diary is not like that. It has to be managed with it, it's micromanaged. So in a way, I think this might be a positive sign, but the proof will be in the pudding down the line. And obviously Harry's here and he's complaining that you know, the security issues. That's why Meghan doesn't come here, and he's not got the full sort of protocol while he's here. Yes, they know his routine and what he's doing, but he didn't get a police escort. That's why he was late to a couple of engagements, because London, of course, as you know, Mike, is currently gridlocked because of the tube strike. So in a way, and yet this country, and he was doing selfies, looks perfectly safe for him. And so this is where people get frustrated with him, the hypocrisy. Yet we see what goes on in America, where you would think it's the Badlands, you know, and you know, what's he worried about in this country compared to being in America, compared to being somewhere else? So it's very interesting to see how it plays out in the future. And will it mean that we get Meghan to come over here because Harry's able to say, look, it's perfectly safe, and I actually want my children to see my family?
Well, that would be nice. Now, I'm going to ask you a technical question here, because you, being from the upper classes, know a bit about high tea. And what would they have had for tea as they sat down together in Clarence House? I mean, is it a sort of Fortnum and Mason's special with a few, you know, cucumber sandwiches? What would they have?
High tea, that's a load of baloney. He probably just had it probably just did have a cup of tea. High tea.
Oh, come on.
High tea is... Okay, I'll tell you what high tea is, if I get it right, okay? I knew one of the great intellectual discussions I have with Mike is, well, all those problems in the world, to discuss high tea.
Yes.
Well, basically, high tea is sort of between supper and tea.
Right.
Right? So you might then have a crumpet, a scone, or something like that, just a bit more elaborate than just a cucumber sandwich and a cake.
And not just a biscuit. I mean, this is what I'm saying. These are important matters, you know. This is keeping Britain's
I don't think it,
British.
Do you know anyone have a high tea? No, I think, I'm afraid at 6 o'clock when they were meeting, he left at 6:15 or something like that.
Yeah.
That's probably getting to cocktail hour, isn't it?
Well, I've got a problem, you see, because I sometimes go to a place called the Wolseley in Piccadilly, which you may be familiar with.
You.
And I generally hang around a bit longer than I should after lunch, and people start coming in for tea. And they start ordering all sorts of stuff. In fact, I was once asked to stop swearing, but funnily enough, it wasn't me that was swearing. It was my female companion who was swearing, who's a formerly a very highly placed political sort of campaigner. Yeah. But anyway, no, people are now in London. People come in and have high tea in Fortnum and Mason's, in the Wolseley, and it's a big affair. They've got like scones, they've got sandwiches. It's all going on.
Well, I know if you go into the Ritz, you can't get a ticket for tea. Tourists, it's part of the tourist thing, having tea in this
and it's about £100 a go as well.
Oh,
but anyway, listen, next time you come to London, you can host me for proper tea, you know, and you can teach me how to do it. Rupert Bell, thank you very much indeed. Rupert Bell, the man who knows a thing or two about high tea. That's what Prince Harry had with his dad yesterday, apparently. Coming up, more on the terrible news about Charlie Kirk. We've been talking this morning.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 8. It is, of course, Thursday, September the 11th. Rather inauspicious anniversary, of course, because it's the anniversary of September the 11th, that terrible, terrible day all those years ago when Al-Qaeda attacked the United States, attacked the Western world, basically, flew 2 planes into the Twin Towers in New York City, killing more than 3,000 people and changing, really, the face of the world forever. We celebrate the fact that now we can look back on that and not have to be quite so sad as we were then, but we certainly commemorate it. But the distressing aspect of what we're doing this morning is that Charlie Kirk, a young man of 31 years with a young family, was brutally assassinated yesterday afternoon, as he was talking to some students in Utah at a rally in which he was basically arguing that free speech was the most important thing that we cherish here in the Western world. And one of his enemies, somebody who didn't agree with him, somebody who didn't like what he thought, somebody who didn't like his opinions, decided to take a high-powered rifle up onto the roof of a nearby building and shoot him with 1 bullet in the neck. He didn't survive very long. He was taken straight to hospital, but he was pronounced dead literally less than an hour after he was shot. It's a shocking story. It's a terrible, terrible place to be that we find ourselves in. We're going to be finding out exactly how America is dealing with it. But let's have a listen to Fox News host Will Kane breaking the news last night.
As I just mentioned, Charlie Kirk has died at a hospital in Utah. At the risk of sounding repetitive, Charlie Kirk was an incredible man. Charlie Kirk was a good friend, not just to me, for anyone who holds a microphone and anyone involved in politics, anyone he came into contact with. You'll hear it repeated on numerous occasions that Charlie Kirk was my friend. And that doesn't make any one of us unique. It makes Charlie Kirk unique because every single one of us would get a text, would get a direct message, would get a call from Charlie, encouraging us, congratulating us, complimenting a conversation or a segment. In a business that is full of ego, in a business that is full of competition, Charlie Kirk was a true friend.
And seemingly Charlie Kirk was a fascinating and kind individual. He was here at the Oxford Union not very long ago. We'll play you some clips from that. He was a man that encouraged positive thought. He was a man that encouraged debate, a man that encouraged all kinds of conversations to go on. He was a man, funnily enough, who had retweeted something that I did only within the last month or so. And so I have to say, I was very shocked last night when I saw the news about what had happened. I was very shocked this morning. I was quite emotional when we started the show. I think I'm sort of slightly calmer now. But it really is quite an extraordinary thing to live and work in the business that we are in, which is all about opinion. It's all about voices, it's all about opinions, it's all about whatever you may think you know. It's all about what arguments you can have and what debates you can have and how you can consider the way that we should be running the country, the way that we should talk to each other. You know, I'm not going to suddenly go all soft on you and go, oh, we shouldn't be able to say nasty things about each other, because that's not the point. But we should certainly be able to say that you shouldn't be being shot because you've got an opinion that somebody doesn't like. And I think that is really where we are. This, of course, is from lots of you talking about Keir Starmer this morning as well, because there are some other big stories going on, not least Peter Mandelson, who he should have by no means still be the a US ambassador for the United Kingdom. Morning, Mike. Alex from Hove here. I heard the news break on talkTV last night about Charlie Kirk. What really worries me is how long will it take for this American craze to reach our shores? We all seem to get the worst politics of what the USA has to offer. I remember when it used to be positive and cool, like MTV. How times have really changed. Stay safe, mate. Love the show. Yeah, I mean, look, Alex, it's not really anything new that politics is a very dangerous game in America. You know, you don't have to go back a few decades to know that there were political assassinations going on all the time. Somebody tried to kill Ronald Reagan. Somebody shot a bullet at him. Somebody did kill John F. Kennedy Jr. Somebody did kill Martin Luther King Jr. Somebody did kill Robert F. Kennedy. You know, people get assassinated. It was only recently that the head of that pharmaceutical company that got killed. You know, there is a gun culture in America, which unfortunately sometimes leads to high-profile individuals being shot dead. But I think we're all in shock about what happened to Charlie Kirk. Let's have a listen to what Donald Trump had to say.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight, all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. Today, because of this heinous act, Charlie's voice has become bigger and grander than ever before, and it's not even close. May God bless his memory, may God watch over his family, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Donald Trump speaking there last night about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Let's talk to LaDonna Harvey at Arizona Morning News over there in KTAR in Phoenix, where Charlie Kirk lived, funnily enough. LaDonna, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
I mean, Donald Trump says it's a dark moment for America. He's right, isn't he?
Oh, without a doubt. The one thing that we really have always been proud of as Americans is the fact that, you can say pretty much anything that you would like. It doesn't mean that there's repercussion-free speech, but you still get to speak freely. And Charlie Kirk had the same right as me, as you, as anybody in on United States soil to say whatever it is that he believed and to defend those thoughts. One of the things that you have to appreciate about him, whether you agreed with him or not, and there were many things that I disagreed with Charlie Kirk on. There were some things that I agreed with him on. But the thing that you have to appreciate about him is that he was not afraid to go out and talk, and really just and it wasn't just political rhetoric and people scream each other down all the time. Charlie Kirk would go and he would let somebody express a thought or an opinion, and he would refute that opinion or rebut it in whatever way he saw fit. And he did not believe in the kind of violence that would eventually take his life. He thought that we could reach across and talk to each other, and if you walked away even still disagreeing, it didn't matter because you had the conversation. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to have the conversation. We are Americans. That is the basis of our entire country.
And that is the tragedy of what happened yesterday in Utah, because he was in an open forum. He was talking about free speech literally as he was shot. And I guess, like a lot of people, you don't expect to need the sort of presidential level of security when you go out. But I mean, you can clearly see there's a lot of people there, a few thousand maybe, listening to him. And not every security precaution was taken. We're told that the shooter was on a roof somewhere nearby, probably 200 yards away with a rifle, a high-powered rifle. Probably whoever it was clearly knew what they were doing, because
without a doubt,
shot him right in the neck, you know, from a reasonably large distance away. You know, I mean, will this have a chilling effect on people wanting to do this kind of event now?
Sure. I mean, you know, every little incursion that we see, you know, every little act of violence that you see in a public forum does one thing and one thing only, and that's quash debate. It stops people from gathering. It keeps people from doing the thing that is most natural, I think, for all of us as Americans to do, which is go out and gather and exchange thoughts and argue and fight and disagree, and then walk away from it safe and whole, which you should. I mean, it's politics.
Yeah.
It should never be your life. Your politics should not cost you your life.
They shouldn't, but of course we're all sitting here, and I was quite upset this morning, and very upset last night actually, because strangely, and I know it's not about me obviously, but he had retweeted one of my interviews just about a month or so ago, so I kind of feel like I had a slight connection, even though I'd never met the guy. But but you know, this is what we do. You know, you and I have spent our entire lives just talking for a living, and having opinions which some people don't like. And now we have to wonder whether, you know, if we turn up somewhere, somebody will shoot me.
I mean, I think this is true for anyone. I think that, you know, everybody feels terribly unsafe these days.
Yeah.
And it's a really weird feeling, as you know, especially for me. I grew up in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. That's when, you know, that's when I came of age. And I came of age at a time when we were vigorously discussing everything. I mean, you know, when you're young, that's what you do. You vigorously discuss things and try to form your opinions, or you know, decide is this, do I even have the right opinion? Am I correct about something? And you know, learning and growing and exchanging those ideas is so fundamentally important to all of us in our development. It's what helps build our own character, is the ability to hold an opinion, hear something from somebody else, and go, "Ooh, I'm wrong."
I know, it's really awful.
You know, I'm wrong about something, and you grow and you learn that way. This is just absolutely appalling.
Yeah, it really is. LaDonna, listen, we've got to run because we've got lots going on today, but thank you. LaDonna Harvey, Arizona Morning News, KTAR Phoenix. Charlie Kirk actually lived in Phoenix, Arizona. But of course, he was gunned down yesterday by somebody who didn't agree with him because they didn't like what he said. Extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. This is the talk tweet that Charlie retweeted. It was me speaking to Katie Lamb about the thousands of Afghans allowed to settle in Britain. Have a look. But in terms of the people who have come in, and it looks like there might be about 36 or 40,000 by the end of it, are we supposed to support them for the rest of their lives? Is that supposed to be them coming in here to get a free house and free benefits and all the rest of it? Because if we're giving them a free house when they get here, what incentive is there for them to pay for anything?
Well, again, under the current system and what they would qualify for, the answer is basically yes. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them will choose to work, but we are making it a choice.
And that's Katie Lamb there, a Tory MP, talking about the terrible story that we discovered some weeks ago anyway, that a bunch of Afghans had been brought into this country under the cloak of darkness on sort of unmarked planes in the middle of the night, because they had been the subject of leaked documentation, which the government thought they didn't know what to deal with. Anyway, listen, let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott, talks international. There's a bit of breaking news first of all. Emily Thornberry has apparently dropped out of the Labour deputy leadership race. How irrelevant that piece of breaking news is at this moment in time, I can't begin to tell you. Isabel Oakeshott, though, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. I mean, I can tell from your voice that you feel as I do this morning. I actually just didn't sleep a wink last night. I found that news so very shocking.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are such implications. As you said, this is absolutely not about us, but it is about our politicians and any right-wing kind of commentators who stick their neck out. And indeed, of course, it's not limited to the right. You know, the victims of political assassinations in our own countries have been from across the political divide, Joe Cox being the most obvious one, and David Amos.
Yeah.
But it really does hammer home what has happened to our public discourse and the sheer vulnerability of anyone who quite literally sticks their neck out. An unfortunate analogy at this point, but that is what politicians who fight for causes do. And, you know, we can all disagree with each other, but most people, I think, even if I think they're completely wrong about things, I still think that they're generally motivated by good intentions. You know, most people on the left genuinely want to make life better for other people. I mean, I just happen to think that their ideas are all wrong.
Right.
The problem, I think, is that the left so often depicts those on the right as evil. You know, they don't seem to be prepared to accept that we just have a different prescription for making the world a better place than they do. They genuinely think we're evil. And by way of example of that, you only have to look to yesterday, when you had that moron, John McDonnell, pathetically wheeling out the old tropes about Nazism and 1930s Germany in the context of reform. You know, what an unfortunate intervention by him yesterday in the light of what's happened, because when you say things like that, you know, I'm all in favour of people being able to say stupid things. That's how our country should be. But you've got to realise that when you casually depict people on the other side of the political divide as evil Nazis, there may well be truly devastating consequences to that. One nutter, one gun, or one knife, that is all it takes. And it is incumbent on all of us to have that in mind. I really worry for certain people, and I'm sure you can imagine who I'm thinking of, in the forefront of political debate, the most controversial figures in our politics right now. I truly worry for their safety.
Absolutely right, and because we see the rhetoric, and you know, you and I are both reasonably robust individuals. But I was really upset by it last night, you know, and this morning. And the thing is that you think, well, we can't allow that to affect how we operate. We can't allow feeling, you know, in some way vulnerable to stop us from saying what we say. And I wouldn't do it for a moment. But it just makes you think, doesn't it? It just makes you wonder what on earth the world is coming to.
It does make you think. And, you know, I am certain that neither Nigel Farage nor Keir Starmer nor Richard Tice nor anyone else in the forefront of British politics is going to change the way they approach things in the light of this. They are still going to be as robust as ever, as speaking from the heart and convicted. But it does have practical implications. I mean, there was footage yesterday of Sarah Pochin and Richard Tice around just outside Parliament, in you know, pretty sort of heated moments there, talking to old Steve Bray, who I know would never do any harm to anybody. He's that pro EU propagandist who stands outside Parliament. But you know, you've got to now think carefully about going out into crowds and what may happen. I don't think that'll stop our politicians doing it, and I really hope it doesn't. But it's just something that one has to be increasingly conscious of.
Yeah. And what do you think's causing it, though? Because, you know, you and I have been around for a while. It's never been this bad before. What do you think's happened to people?
I do think social media plays a significant part in this. It makes everybody feel as if they've got their own little power base, and however completely unhinged that may be. And I think social media inflames things, and you know, people like me who write punchy things on social media are part of that. And you know, I know that, you know, punchy opinion is there's a market for it. And I don't mean like a financial market, but actually, people want to have the row, don't they?
Yeah.
And it's always been over time that there are lunatics, but at this point, they're perhaps more likely to be political lunatics than they were in the past. They might previously have sort of found their outlet in some other form of horror. But politics has become tremendously polarized and tremendously angry. And I think that is particularly the case in countries like the UK, like Germany, like France, and like America, where there are massive, profound cultural shifts taking place. And you've got people on both sides of the political divide who are very ideologically driven, and they are frightened by what they see, whether it is the impact on their country of mass uncontrolled immigration, or equally people who feel that mass uncontrolled immigration is a great thing and are terrified by what they see and smear as the far right. Everything's got so extreme. You look back to the Blair years, and I feel that our country was fairly united. Blair, obviously his reputation came to suffer dreadfully post-Iraq. But Blair was somebody that those on the moderate right could actually get behind. That was actually his genius. And we just don't really have many figures that unite us anymore, not in politics.
No, not at all. Let's move on to, just before I let you go, because obviously it's massively important that we talk about this stuff, but let's talk about the other massive story, which would be the only thing we would be talking about normally, which is Peter Mandelson and his incredible series of emails that he appears to have sent to Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted paedophile. Forget about the bizarre Christmas birthday card, rather, that he sent, or his contribution to his 50-page book for his 50th birthday. But basically, on the front page of the Daily Mail today, telling Jeffrey Epstein that, despite the fact that he's been convicted of paedophile offences, your friends love you, you should fight for early release, remember the art of war, advising him about strategy and saying you must come back. I mean, it gives a complete lie to the idea that he said yesterday to Harry Cole, that he was hoodwinked by him and he was sorry that he fell for his lies. Clearly that is that's a balderdash.
So after seeing that first Harry Cole interview, I thought, right, he's going to scrape through this. And then came this torrent of additional information. I think his position is completely untenable.
Yeah.
What this does is lift the lid, as if it were necessary, on the sinister side of the high prince of political darkness that is Peter Mandelson. The quote that stood out to me amongst an absolute rich tapestry of ghastly possibilities is everything can be turned into an opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Peter Mandelson from top to bottom. Everything can be turned into an opportunity. He has shown his true colours here. Some will say, well, if there's anyone defending him, I don't know if there is, he was a loyal friend and, even supporting his best mate while his best mate was in such trouble. But I just think it doesn't wash. In the end, he said that he loves a paedophile. Great. Thanks.
I know. And worse than that, the Prime Minister of this country said yesterday that he stands full square basically behind him.
And that's exactly what the Prime Minister said pretty much this time last week about Angela Rayner. And I said at the time when Starmer came out with his full support for Angela Rayner, he may come to regret those words. And within 24 hours, he did. Starmer has no judgment. Every day he demonstrates this fact. He has very, very poor stroke, totally absent political judgment. And in any normal circumstances, that would be the undoing of him. And, as commentators have said, 90% of the Labour Parliamentary Party cannot stand this man. If this were the Tory party, he would have been defenestrated long ago. But unfortunately, it's very hard to get rid of him.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely shocking state of affairs. But listen, great to talk to you as ever, Isabel Oakeshott. Thank you very much indeed. Talks International editor there, talking about the front page of the Daily Mail. Now Mandelson must be fired. is what they say. A chorus of cross-party fury as emails show that UK's ambassador told Epstein, "Your friends love you and you must fight for early release." Of course, don't forget, he also said everything can be turned into an opportunity. He also called him his best pal. He also sent Epstein photos of himself topless. I mean, it's so sleazy and disgusting and ghastly. I don't even know where to begin. How on earth Keir Starmer can stand by this man is extraordinary. Let's get a voice note from Gina.
Good morning, Mike. So sad to hear about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Do you know what? We're in the fight of our lives to preserve free speech, common sense, and honestly, just common decency. Don't think the left really should continue with this extreme shutting down of things they just don't agree with. What they do is the polar opposite of what Charlie did. And whilst I didn't agree with everything he said, he really was a decent human being. So sad.
Isn't it just awful, dreadful? Coming up, we're going to speak to Ross Clark. He's written a piece on page 10 of The Sun today about net zero and Ed Miliband, a more ridiculous figure you could not dream up. If you invented him in central casting in Hollywood, he would look exactly like he does with his orange high-vis vest, his stupid glasses and his bleeding ukulele. What a plank. This is Talk.
It is outrageous, but unlike Starmer, if you do something outrageous, whether it's by voice or by tweet, Starmer himself said you shouldn't be prosecuted or jailed for an offensive tweet you then delete. But of course, he's now become a very authoritarian prime minister, which, and of course, isn't it funny when Nigel anecdotally aligned Starmer to Kim Jong-un, of course, he was slaughtered by that by the BBC and the mainstream mess.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 8:31. We're going to speak to Ross Clark in a moment. Also, Steve Baker's going to join us in a minute as well. A bit of breaking news for you. Emily Thornberry is out of the deputy leadership race for the Labour Party. She's decided to not garner as many votes. I think they need to get 80 votes for each other, otherwise they can't continue. It looks like it's going to be Lucy Powell against Bridget Phillipson. We'll let you know about that as we go. Jill says this: I'm completely shocked by the assassination of Charlie Kirk on what is always for me a very sombre day, because it's 9/11, of course, the commemoration of that 24 years ago. I woke up in disbelief at the news we followed last night, that someone could be so evil to take the life of a man filled with political passion and love of God and his family. I slept so badly last night just thinking of his beautiful wife and children and how they must be feeling. The videos of the left cheering his death are worse than despicable. It's been a very dark week for America. Well, it has, especially with that murder of the Ukrainian girl in Carolina as well. Let's talk, though, to Ross Clark, columnist at The Sun. He's written a piece this morning in The Sun about Ed Miliband. Finally, families and businesses have realised that Miliband's unhinged net zero policies are condemning us to poverty and industrial decline. We talked about this yesterday, a piece on the front page of The Times, in which it said that more and more people are now beginning to realise that the whole net zero scam is indeed a scam. And much of what the warnings are about it have been massively exaggerated. Ross, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Hi.
It's really rather good news, this, isn't it? I mean, I was partially tongue-in-cheek claiming credit for this yesterday because I thought, well, clearly people have been listening to talk for so long now that they've finally managed to understand that this biggest scam of all time is, in fact, net zero.
Yeah, I mean, for years, Miliband and other government ministers, of Conservatives as well as Labour, by the way, have sort of comforted themselves on sort of polls which suggest that, you know, majority of British public are behind net zero and so on. And what they failed totally to realise is that people's opinions change very sharply when they are presented with the real-world consequences of net zero targets. And if you look at that Times poll, as only 6% of people would be happy to see higher energy bills to pay for net zero. Only 20% would be happy to see higher taxes to pay for net zero. And the number of people who would be happy to see petrol and diesel cars banned, that again has plummeted. Support for net zero is collapsing as the consequences become clear. And Ed Miliband is just so far behind the curve on this. He still thinks that, you know, the nation is foursquare behind his plan to decarbonise the electricity grid by 2030 and the rest of the country economy by 2050.
Yeah, I mean, it is extraordinary, isn't it, that no matter how much we try to kind of strip it away and change it, though, that Keir Starmer seems incapable of doing so. I mean, he tried to get Ed Miliband moved to the Department of Housing in his reshuffle last Friday, and Miliband just went, I'm not going. I want to stay where I am.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, Keir Starmer's supposed to be ruthless with his cabinet reshuffles, and you know, look how he dealt with Jeremy Corbyn when you know, over anti-Semitism and so on. He had this sort of ruthless image, but then when it came to Ed Miliband, he apparently told Ed Miliband, you know, I want to move you to housing secretary, and Ed Miliband said no, and Starmer said all right then, and that was it. You know, he talked
such
about
leadership. I mean, I can't imagine. Yeah, I mean, the other thing about your piece is that, as you say, there are so many other countries which have embraced renewable energy to some extent, but they haven't gone sort of outright mad. I mean, we're buying in, as I say, to the point of boredom, oil and gas from Norway, which is being plundered from the seabed, literally 2 feet away from which the places we've just shut down.
Yeah, and I mean, there's one expression which really irritates me, which crops up again and again from government ministers and other lobbyists in the Green movement, is referring to something they call the race to net zero. And there is no global race to net zero. It's Britain sort of seems to be lumbering along by itself, tripping over its bootlaces, while the rest of the world, as you say, you know, it's not that the rest of the world is not sort of interested in renewable energy at all. There's a huge investment in it in China, but there's a very, very big difference when it comes to China, the US, and virtually every other country around the world. They want to reduce their carbon emissions. They set they sort of nodded along with some of these targets, but in practice they are not sacrificing their economies to achieve any kind of net zero target, and that's what we are doing. Look at Jim Ratcliffe earlier this week announcing he's withdrawing £3 billion of investment from Britain because of windfall taxes on oil, gas, and he's going to invest in the US instead. It's this quite obvious direct transfer of wealth from Britain to other countries that is being caused by this net zero drive.
It is absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? Ross, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Ross Clark, Ed's got zero clue, is the headline on the page 10 piece this morning. Finally, families and businesses have realised that Miliband's unhinged net zero policies are condemning us to poverty and industrial decline. Extraordinary stuff, isn't it? How can anybody think it's a good idea? Let's get a voice note from John on Charlie.
Morning, Mike. John from West Yorkshire here. I was just going to bed last night and I happened to see the situation that Charlie Kirk had just been shot, and then the tragic news that he'd passed. Like many people in the States and many people over here, I couldn't sleep. Didn't know the guy, saw him on podcast, found him immensely intelligent, immensely considerate to the other half that he argued with, always had an answer, always was respectful, always upheld free speech. It is a tragic moment in Western society. Have a good day if you can. Bye-bye.
John, thank you very much indeed. I think it is, there's no question. It's a massive watershed moment for our culture, I think, for our history, for our well-being, for our society, because we are a Western society. What happens in America happens here. And what happened yesterday in America, where Charlie Kirk was shot dead, was absolutely abhorrent and ghastly and awful. And it's hard to imagine and hard to explain and hard to know where we go from here. But hopefully we find a good place to go. Coming up, Steve Baker's going to be here, former Conservative government minister. He's launching a new a new sort of political movement, fighting for a free future. It couldn't be more apposite, I think. We'll find out what he means coming up.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:41. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until the 10 o'clock hour, which is when Alex Wilkes will be here, taking you all the way through to 1 o'clock. The Morning Glory podcast out, of course, after 10 this morning as well, around about 10:15, 10:30. Let's talk to Steve Bacon now, former Conservative government minister, because he is in the business of launching a new campaign in which he's going to try and have a new revolution. Basically, he says a revolution, and perhaps he hasn't used the phrase common sense, but you might want to use it, fighting for a free future, a new movement to shift the UK's political debate towards liberty, low taxes and smaller government. Well, we could all do with a bit of that, Steve. Very good morning to you.
Very good morning, Mike. Yes, as you say, a movement for common sense to amplify authoritative and authentic voices for liberty, low taxes and a freer future with smaller government. That's what it's all about. We've got 5 key ways of doing it: a Substack, a podcast, we've got a by invitation community and educational programs, and of course for those people who would like a Fighting for a Free Future t-shirt or baseball cap, there is the shop. So we're going to be working to create a community of people to really amplify voices for a free future. Hopefully it will mean that there's a far broader range of great guests to come on your show.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to it. And I mean, obviously, the overarching conversation this morning is all about Charlie Kirk and what happened yesterday in the United States of America, where fighting for a free future apparently sometimes has a terrible cost to it.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely grieve for Charlie Kirk and his family. Quite moved by it. It's a terrible thing to have happened. I know he chose to go out and argue with crowds, and that's a difficult thing for anyone to do. So, yeah. You know, I cut him a lot of slack for the sometimes more combative style he adopted than I would choose. And, you know, you can find things he said that I might disagree with. I found a video of him arguing against democracy earlier, but for representative government. So, you know, he certainly said things I disagree with. But overwhelmingly, I did agree with him, and I certainly salute his courage and his goodness. You know, that was undoubtedly a great and good man, doing what he thought best to fight for the best interests of everyone, including those in his audience who disagreed with him.
I mean, you may know more about him than I do. I mean, he's not somebody whose works or whose writings I know that much about, to be honest. It's just the idea that somebody gets shot dead because somebody doesn't agree with them that I find so absolutely and utterly abhorrent.
It is absolutely disgusting, yes, and disgraceful. And those young people I've seen particularly celebrating his death should really be thoroughly ashamed of themselves.
Yeah.
And it's a good man with a family has been killed for doing what he thought in everyone's best interests. And for him to be murdered is a genuinely shocking thing. And as I say, I grieve for him and his family. And I also worry for our politics as well as America's. I think people need to just work out how to stop hating those they disagree with. Done a lot of work with Professor Paul Dolan about that. He's written a book called Beliefism, subtitled How to Stop Hating Those We Disagree With. And that book couldn't be more timely. I think it's a wake-up call for everybody. You know, I'm old enough to remember David Lammy saying that I and others were worse than Nazis. And when he was challenged on it, he doubled down. Well, he's now the Deputy Prime Minister. And I can't help noticing that a number of members of the Cabinet have been coming out to say that political violence isn't acceptable. Well, I hope they're still talking about in the same terms when others are using totally unjustifiable language in condemnation of those they disagree with. Everyone should take stock. We need to be civilized in how we talk to one another. We need to be moderate, yes, firm, yes, definite, maybe sometimes even provocative. But we should be civilized and remember, actually, there's a lot that bonds us together. A lot that bonds us together with a common sense of decency and purpose that we'd all like everyone to be more prosperous. Well, that's the spirit we'll bring with Fighting for a Free Future. We'll be civilised, we'll be purposeful, we'll be authentic, we'll be determined, but we certainly won't be deterred by aggressive and unpleasant condemnation from others. And certainly we stand with Charlie Kirk's family in grieving for him.
Of course. And I mean, one of the things that I would say resonates with me, because I think very few people say it these days, smaller government. You know, government got very big during the time the Tories were in charge. Started off under Blair, I suppose, with all the new appointments that were made. With every single year that passes, we seem to hire more special advisors, more, PRs. I think there's now something like 7,000 people working in government public relations, which seems to me to be way over the top, especially considering that their message is so badly received. How are you going to make government smaller?
Well, there's three ways. You have to start by recognising there's three ways to organise society. The private citizen's way, which is voluntary cooperation, prices, profit and loss, civil society and so on. And then there's the government's way, which is rules and coercion. And sitting in the middle is this third way attempt to blend them both together. And that's what's failing. It's a kind of managerialism that's been in place since the end of the Second World War. And no one can claim that we're lightly regulated in this country, or that taxes are too low, or that we don't borrow enough, or that debt's been too cheap. Quite the contrary. So, it's time to accept, if we're going to get change, it's time to accept that what we're living through is a kind of second crisis of socialism. The first one was easy to spot for people as old as you and me. We saw the Cold War end, we saw the Berlin Wall fall. But what's happening today is a kind of crisis of managerial socialism, the idea that the government can intervene in all our lives for our benefit. And it's failing. And, that is common sense. And your listeners will know that government is not small, that the burden of regulation is not light, and we need to start recognising that. Every single minister and shadow minister needs to be asked, what are you going to do to avoid the coming default of the welfare state? Because government figures show that age-related spending is completely unaffordable, and we need to go for growth. And I want us to have hope. Young people despair of ever buying a home. We need to do something about that. And I want us to have hope. That hope is going to come through economic growth and the consistent application of the principles of a free society. We're going to start this thing.
And what's your eventual aim then? Because you're saying you're not really a political party as such. I mean, there's a lot of those starting up. Everywhere you look, there's a political party starting up. What's your aim in the end?
Well, I would love for us to help create the conditions within which the UK's own Javier Milei could appear at the next general election, because that would be not quite soon enough. I think it probably is going to be a project that takes longer than that. But for me, we need a Prime Minister to emerge who's willing to really cut spending and to carry the public with them as they do it, so that we can cut taxes and have a different way of governing our country. It needs a real paradigm shift, not just amongst politicians, but amongst the public, amongst commentators, amongst those who write newspaper articles. It needs a thoroughgoing revisiting of the way we think about how we're governed and what we think the role of the coercive power of the state is in all our lives. I think it should be a lot less.
Yeah. Good to talk to you. Steve Baker, thank you very much indeed, former Conservative Government Minister, now wanting to launch a new campaign. It's not just a revolution. He says it's a revolution of small government and, of course, of freedom and a free future. I wish him well, personally. I mean, anyone who wants to make the government smaller is all good for me, as far as I'm concerned. In the interest of free speech, of course, let me tell you about this, in case you haven't got it yet. The World of Common Sense is coming to a theatre near you, especially if you live in Shepherd's Bush. Shepherd's Bush Empire, on the 15th of November. It's the O2 Shepherd's Bush Empire. Myself and Jeremy Kyle. Tickets are now on sale via Ticketmaster. There's only a few left, and they are, it has to be said, right at the back. Okay, so I'm not going to pretend that they're right in the front, because they're not. They're right in the back, and they're a little bit cheaper than the ones that are right at the front. But there's a couple left. If you want to go and find yourself a very good place to be on a Saturday evening, 15th of November, that's where you go. The World of Common Sense. It's going to be a great show. Can you imagine me and Jeremy Kyle let loose for the first time on stage together? And I'm going to get into a lot of trouble if I tell you what we're doing. But let me tell you this. There will be DNA testing. There will be lie detectors. Okay? Simple as that. This is Talk.
course, he's a civil servant now, and Keir Starmer will think a successful civil servant, ambassador to the court of Donald Trump, a trade deal signed. We've got Donald Trump coming over for a state visit very soon. He wouldn't want to lose him so quickly after losing his deputy prime minister. But the crux of it is, I think, and Mandelson himself almost laid the ground, saying it was a very embarrassing, in his words, stuff is yet to emerge.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. So much going on this morning, in addition to the terrible, ghastly, awful news about Charlie Kirk that came in overnight. We've got Harry having tea with his dad yesterday, Prince Harry, that is, of course, and Peter Mandelson still clinging on to his job. He must be fired, it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. Chorus of cross-party fury as emails show the UK ambassador told Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted paedophile, "Your friends love you, you should fight for an early release." I mean, absolutely extraordinary stuff. Jeremy Carl's been in touch. Him and Vix are driving around somewhere in the southwest of this country. I don't know why or where, what they're doing. But, of course, there's an awful lot to do. We were just talking about the Saturday, 15th of November at the O2 Shepherd's Bush Empire. You can download the app or visit Ticketmaster.com to get your tickets for that. And he also wanted to point out that he's going to be grilling me on some of my Fleet Street days and some of the stuff that we got up to back then in the good old days. Yes, it should be very fascinating, very good indeed. Let's talk now, though, to Lloyd Canfield, who is, of course, the Chelsea FC reporter at The Sun. It's 90 minutes in 90 seconds.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
Lloyd, very good morning to you, sir. How are you doing?
Not very bad, thank you. How are you?
Very well indeed. The conversation's still going on about England and who they've got to play and who they've got to leave out. Thomas Tuchel says he's got no problem leaving out the big names.
Yeah, he's not been afraid at all of leaving people out. The likes of Palmer obviously was missing from this international break with injury. The same, Saka also not there. So England, to be honest, played really well in their absence, and Noni Madueke was brilliant for England, so was Morgan Rogers. So he's going to have some difficult decisions to make when it comes to the World Cup next summer, and it'll be interesting to see who he does select. Trent also is left out. He's obviously made a big move to Real Madrid. But Thomas Tuchel's been a massive fan of Reece James ever since they worked together at Chelsea, so it's going to be really interesting to see who he does pick for the World Cup when it comes around next summer.
Sure. Also on the back page today, more trophies for Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, Forest, they've had a very good season, obviously, last season, and they're going to do really well, they think, again this season. Chris Wood is on electric form. Matt Sells in goal has been brilliant, and their defence is really good. They've got Ange, obviously, coming in now. Ange, obviously, won the Europa League last season with Spurs. They've got rid of Nuno Espirito Santo, and it'll be interesting to see how Postecoglou gets on with his attacking style at Forest, which is so different to what Nuno Espirito Santo had previously.
Yeah, absolutely good stuff. Lloyd Canfield, thank you very much indeed. Chelsea's FC reporter at The Sun. That was 90 minutes in 90 seconds.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
Coming up in the next hour, we're going back across the United States of America to get the latest on the death of Charlie Kirk. Right now, though, it's time to have a look at what's going on in France, because yesterday, of course, a massive day of protest, a massive day of sort of general strike and interaction between the police and the people. Gavin Mortimer is here, French correspondent of The Spectator. Gavin, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good stuff. Good to see you. Always sort of... It's usually the harbinger of summer, really, when you see the French police getting stuck in with their batons and their helmets to the general populace. But there was a lot of action going on yesterday.
Yeah, there was. I was up in Paris. Paris actually was a very middle-class protest. Lots of students there, and I saw more Palestinian flags than I did French flags.
Blimey.
And that was the general theme of the day. It was what had started out. This protest movement, Block Everything, was launched a couple of months ago, and it was, I suppose, the best way to describe it, Mike. It was a howl of anger and despair from the silent majority, but it was quickly hijacked by the far left.
Yeah.
And there was some of the hard left unions launched block protests across the country, everywhere really, from Le Havre in the north down to the far south of the country. I think there were about 600 arrests, but it wasn't as bad as the police had feared, because there were reports of the extreme left, Antifa and Black Bloc were going to get involved. But as I said, I was up in Paris yesterday, and as you can see there, there were a lot of middle-class students and not the toughest guys in the world. And as you mentioned, the French police, the CRS, the riot squad, there's some big boys there, and they were ready for any trouble, and there was a bit of trouble, but generally, yeah, not much.
They weren't there. They weren't messing around, were they? So, I mean, it's sort of not as bad as we thought it might be. Then is that the end of it for the next week or two, or what's happening today?
Well, it's going to be interesting, Mike, because on September the 18th. There is a day of industrial action by most of the unions, and that, I think, has the potential to paralyse the country. I mean, interestingly, yesterday I was watching the French news when I came back from Paris, and you saw some footage of sort of angry confrontations between protesters and people trying to get to work.
Right.
It reminded me a bit. Do you remember a couple of years ago at Canning Town?
Yes.
There was some Extinction Rebellion idiots.
Absolutely.
Blocked a tube, and they were dragged down by commuters trying to get to work. And it's very much this sort of these middle-class, privileged people blocking working people getting to work, and that's what happened yesterday in France. And some of these, the angry commuters said, what are you doing? If you want to block something, block the Elysee Palace, block Parliament, but don't block us on the ring roads trying to get to work. And I think this is very much what you're seeing. You're seeing this privileged far left minority, very similar in composition to the UK, and the general population, the silent majority, who are in despair at the cost of living crisis, mass immigration, etc., and they're not being listened to in Parliament by the politicians.
No, absolutely right. It's a sort of Western European malaise we're all suffering from at the moment, but heaven forbid, maybe they'll grow up and get proper jobs one of these days and not live off the parents and get the Volvo into work every time. Gavin, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Gavin Mawson, French correspondent at The Spectator, of course. We've got loads more to do coming up. Sharon says, my condolences to Charlie's family and friends. So sad. What is happening? I loved listening to his debates. He was a very intelligent man. I did not agree with some of his views, but I respected them. Sharon, I think a lot of people would say the same. Plenty of people don't really even know what he stood for, but everybody knows what he now stands for, and what he stands for now is freedom of speech. Assassinated for thinking something that somebody didn't like. Absolutely extraordinary times. 0344 499 1000. We're going back to the US coming up in the next hour, and Rear Admiral Chris Parry's here as well. This is Talk. Aww.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 4 minutes past 9. We're here all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course, when it's going to be time for Alex Phillips sitting in for Julia Hartley-Brewer. Lots and lots of things going on this morning. Forget about Peter Mandelson on the front pages. He is still in a job, even though lots and lots of people are calling for him to be fired as US ambassador. We've also got, of course, Prince Harry on the front page of The Sun. A tea with the King, with his father, of course, which he did yesterday afternoon. 54 minutes worth. We tried to get out of Rupert Bell exactly what sort of high tea he would have had. We weren't able to do that. But also, mostly, we're talking about Charlie Kirk, the terrible, awful situation that happened yesterday. Last evening, he was assassinated as he spoke to a group of students in Utah. One single bullet from a high-velocity rifle fired at him from what looks like about 200 yards away from somebody on a roof. The assailant still has not been captured. The police are still looking for him. We don't know who it is that did it. We don't know why they did it. All we know is that we can assume that because Charlie Kirk was seen as a kind of a right-wing polemicist, other people have said, well, that's not really fair. He was a Christian nationalist. Whatever it is that he had a certain number of views which would be considered to be on the right wing. He was very much a supporter of Donald Trump, very much somebody that Donald Trump admired, very much somebody who probably helped Donald Trump get elected, and somebody who was very well thought of, not just on the right, but by young people on the right, who really saw him as a beacon of light and somebody who spoke the truth. And if you didn't agree with him, he would continue to argue with you until you did agree with him. And the point is that he was all about democracy, he was all about free speech, and he was actually talking about free speech when the bullet that killed him entered his neck. We're not going to show you that because it's too graphic, and quite frankly, I don't want to give any publicity to the scumbag who shot him dead. Let's hear a voice note from Jay.
Hi, Mike. I'm a Brit who lives in the States, and I just want to say we've all been heavily impacted, especially people like me who work in conservative politics and conservative activism. We just want to say we're not going to let our voice down. We're going to pick up Charlie's legacy. And I just want to say to everyone, if you're on the left or the right, it doesn't matter. Someone was assassinated, and I just want people to think about his 2 kids and his wife.
Yeah, absolutely, Jay. I think a lot of people will just want to think about his family, his life, his contribution to discourse, basically, because what we don't want to see in any way, shape or form is the death of democracy, the death of debate, and the death of conversation. But that's what somebody in America wants to do. They want to shut down anybody they don't agree with. And unfortunately, some of them have guns. And that's now why we are where we are. 0344 499 1000 is the number. It's coming up to 6 minutes past 9. This is Morning Glory. This is, of course, Morning Glory with you all the way through until 10 o'clock regarding Morning Mike. After the tragic news from America, says Brian in Worthing, all these events of this kind should have drones up covering the rooftops. They are always on a roof. It surely wouldn't take a lot, just a thought. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things about Charlie Kirk was that he was out and about an awful lot. He enjoyed going out and doing events like the one he was doing in Utah yesterday. And there's only certain levels of security that you can really do. If you remember, Donald Trump was shot at by somebody on a roof, and he's the President of the United States of America. He would think would have the highest level of security that could ever be had. Surely this should be a wake-up call, says Karen in Taunton. A turning point. No such thing as hate speech, non-crime hate incidents. You don't have the right to not be offended. Free speech for all, even if you don't agree. They've just made this man a martyr, a beacon for free speech. Well, this is the thing. I watch Charlie Kirk regularly and agree with many of his points. His ability to have a fact-based discussion and even bring people around to a new way of thinking was amazing, says Alan. He knew he was in danger doing what the world needed and continued to do so with impact. He was a Christian man, a good man, and a man that will be terribly missed. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that we're even talking about it in this sense, that Charlie Kirk, at the age of 31, assassinated because of some of the things that he thought were right. Let's talk to Ryan Harris, journalist and reporter over in California. Ryan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Thanks for joining us. I mean, I take it that there's no updates yet. As far as we know, the shooter, the protagonist, is still at large, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I found it interesting listening to law enforcement experts, the way they described this. Obviously, it seems like the shot came from a couple hundred yards away, came from a rooftop.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a situation where the building might have been key card protected. One of the experts said would have had to have cased the building at least 2 or 3 times beforehand, would have had to have been up there after the tent was set up to see where his shot would go, and then left with the gun and the shell casing that would come out of the gun after the shot was fired. So, it was something calculated, and surely with that in mind, he also had an escape plan. And that's why they've been unable to find him so far.
Yeah, indeed. And is there any theory about who he might have been? Or, I guess somebody like Charlie Kirk would have a lot of enemies out there.
Really, any theory would be nothing more than speculation, Mike. And as you said, this is a guy who championed free speech, started as a teenager. Put up a card table at the University of Madison with a cardboard sign that simply read, "Debate me."
Right.
And, because he was on the right and because there's a lot of animosity between both sides right now, certainly that attracted a lot of attention from the left. Now, both sides are equally as guilty when it comes to political violence. We've seen that over the decades. Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy and his brother Bobby all killed, all of them, on the left and for different reasons. One side or the other is just not immune to it. And until they find this guy, it'll be hard to determine what a motive is.
Yeah, absolutely right. I suppose there won't be, as usual, because there never is, much of an argument about gun ownership and the numbers of guns that are in America. They always have those conversations whenever there's a school shooting. But, there are an awful lot of gun incidents in America. This is just another one. But it seems to be worse because of the sort of circumstances, in some ways you can dismiss a school shooter as being somebody who's clearly unhinged and has got some kind of, axe to grind. But this appears to be, a relatively, innocent young man with a young family who's been killed because of what he says.
Absolutely. And to your point there, this is a guy who simply wanted people to talk. He just wanted people to debate. Now, he was a supporter of Donald Trump, and there are a lot of people who strongly, I will say, dislike Donald Trump in this country. There are an equal number of people who strongly like Donald Trump and agree with him and support him. So, we're really almost split right down the middle. The election numbers are one thing, but, if you look at the popular vote, it was extremely close. And, just a little bit of swing was all it took in key places to get Donald Trump back in the White House. But here you have Charlie Kirk, just wanted to foster dialogue, father of 2. His youngest is just 7 months old, leaves a wife also behind. And, one of the things I was watching as I was preparing to talk to you, Mike, I went back to California Governor Gavin Newsom's first installment of his podcast, and his guest was Charlie Kirk.
Right.
Now, here's a guy, and one can say certainly that, to say Gavin Newsom is pretty liberal might be a little bit of an understatement. You're talking about the governor of California as well.
Right.
They do call this the left coast. But at one point, Charlie Kirk got Gavin Newsom to acknowledge that he thinks it's unfair that trans female athletes, competing against biological females is unfair.
Yeah.
That was an unprecedented comment from a guy who, 20 years ago was among the first to be performing same-sex marriages on the steps of San Francisco City Hall.
Yeah.
So, he's, again, like you said, he was a champion of free speech, and that's been lost.
That is trouble, isn't it? That you know, when somebody like Gavin Newsom says something which is fairly obvious, people go, "My goodness me, what an amazingly brave thing to say!" Crazy. Ryan, listen, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Ryan Harris, there, journalist and reporter in California. Let's have a listen to what Charlie Kirk says about himself on what he does best.
I go around universities and have challenging conversations, because that's what is so important to our country, is to find our disagreements respectfully, because when people stop talking, that's when violence happens.
I've never seen someone do this.
Well, it's a growing trend because people like me are facing violence, assaults, the left. Yes, the campus Antifa. I've been stormed out of restaurants. I've been assaulted publicly, multiple death threats.
Okay, so what's your goal in all this?
There's more people that agree with me than some people would actually believe, and they come out of the woodwork when I do stuff like this. We record all of it so that we put on the internet so people can see these ideas collide. When people stop talking, that's when you get violence. That's when civil war happens, because you start to think the other side is so evil and they lose their humanity.
And that's the trouble with what we have here in political discourse, isn't it? That, you know, one side is good and one side is evil. Nikki in York says, on the very sad death of Charlie Kirk, I sincerely hope and believe that his death will have the opposite effect of silencing his views and opinions. It will, if anything, gain more support for the things he believed in. The people responsible have made his voice even louder. Yeah, I mean, it's such a tragedy. It's such an awful thing to have happened. Let's talk to Mark Field, former Foreign Office Minister and author. Mark, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. It's a pleasure to be with you here, Mike.
Yeah, very good to see you. We've got plenty of political stories to get stuck into, but let me ask you about your view of the Charlie Kirk situation and how we've somehow arrived at this dreadful place in society now, Western society, where we can't disagree with each other without sort of hating each other.
It is dreadful, and it isn't just social media. I know a lot of people focus on the sewer sometimes that is social media, but only in the last week here in the UK, you've seen a major columnist of a major newspaper, plus a senior Labour politician referring to Nigel Farage as being, you know, like Hitler.
Yeah.
And so the worry is we've got to tone down some of this sort of hysteria that is a part of political discourse. And, you know, the worry I have, and is of course a total personal tragedy, two very young children left without a father after this political assassination, or so it seems. But the worry I have is here, closer to home here in the UK. Over the past 10 years, two MPs have been murdered, assassinated in the course of doing their day-to-day duties. I think this is going to put a lot of people off going into politics, and, you know, understandably. And I have to say, I've got teenage children now, and it was a factor that was involved in my thinking when I left politics in 2019, that the discourse had become that much more hysterical, and everyone wants to play their part in political life. I hope that we can have ideas there, but I don't think we should be complacent this morning when we look at this. I mean, it's understandable to talk about the gun laws and how they operate in the US, but there are issues that could equally apply here in the UK and indeed across the Western world if we don't have open discourse rather than resorting, as you say, to violence, or essentially living in these sort of echo chambers where you don't in any way even respect the idea that there is a marketplace for different political views.
No, of course. I mean, Jeremy Clarkson tweeted out last night, for the first time in my life, I'm genuinely frightened about being a newspaper columnist.
Yeah, and listen, there's some hyperbole that will go on with these sorts of matters, but I think that's right, and there is just that sense that everyone is now a little bit more aware of their security if you're in any form of public life, or, as you say, if you're a journalist or a blogger or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely right. And heaven forbid that kind of, you know, the culture becomes worse than it is already. But you're right. It's something that we all have to think about. Let's talk about some of the big political stories though this morning, because Peter Mandelson would have been the biggest story of all time, I think, this morning. It still is on many of the front pages anyway. But it's extraordinary kind of evaporation of his credibility. Which has happened over the last sort of 48 hours, where, you know, only yesterday in Prime Minister's Questions, Keir Starmer said that he gave him his full backing. You know, he's already apologised for, you know, allowing himself to be convinced that the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein was a good guy. I mean, it's now been completely washed away because overnight these emails have come out, and thanks very much to Harry Cole for getting an interview with Mandelson. These emails have come out in which he said, when he was actually convicted, fight for an early release as he was being jailed for child sex offences. Make sure you read The Art of War, make sure you're always strategising, make sure that you're always preparing for the next opportunity. I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. Listen, Peter Mandelson's a huge, energetic and very effective political operator. There's no doubt about that. Notoriously, and all of us in political life have got our Achilles heels. I think for him, he's always been notoriously bedazzled by being around very powerful and very wealthy people, I think the money in particular. And I think in relation to Epstein, again, that I suspect there's an even bigger cache of emails that's going to come through. You could take a charitable view, and there is a charitable view that you stand by your friends in times of trouble. The less charitable view, of course, is that Mandelson realized that people were going to drop Epstein like a stone, and he saw great financial and economic opportunities that would come out of remaining involved with that individual. And I suspect, again, we're probably going to see a little bit more of exactly what's happened. I'm always reluctant to make too many predictions about people's longevity, but I think it is highly unlikely.
I mean, I guess
Peter Mandelson will be in place by this time next week. So, obviously, we've got the crucial thing of the state visit from Donald Trump and his entourage next week. My instinct is that he'll be gone by then. I can't see how, given this level of controversy. And I think there's been this idea that somehow, Keir Starmer won't want to get rid of Mandelson because he's a sort of firewall against the allegations that are being made against Trump and other powerful people in relation to Epstein. But I don't think that's going to hold true. And I think it's also worth remembering, actually in the context of the Epstein thing, remember Prince Andrew, whose career has been destroyed by historical connections with Epstein. The moment that Epstein was charged, Andrew did step away from the scene. So in many ways, Mandelson's involvement is more serious.
Yeah. But I mean, again, the reflection will then come back to Keir Starmer, because as I said, it was only yesterday that he gave him his full backing. And now we wake up once again to a bunch of newspaper headlines where he must feel rather foolish. And in every single case since Keir Starmer's been Prime Minister, every single person that's had to resign from his cabinet. I mean, this is almost like a carbon copy of what happened last week with Angela Rayner, because this time last week, people were saying, she's going to hang on. Keir doesn't want her to go anywhere. He's going to make sure he protects her. He's going to keep her in there because he needs her to keep placating the left wing of the party. And then, I kept predicting she was gone. And then by Friday, sure enough, she was gone.
Right, you're absolutely spot on. You're absolutely right. Of course, the slight alibi that Keir Starmer had last week, of course, was going to be an independent report, and once that had put the black spot on Angela Rayner, it really was all over. This is going to be more difficult. Clearly, we're now in the area of the court of public opinion. Evidently, very, very many Labour MPs feel very uneasy about Mandelson's continuation in office. They're not necessarily expressing that on a date, at least publicly, but I think privately they realise that it is going to be over. But this ultimately is a decision that Starmer has to make. I don't think that there's going to be something there, or indeed Mandelson may take the view that he needs to fall on his sword. He's done so, as we know, several times before in what has been a controversial career. As I say, he is a highly effective operator. Everyone who ever worked with him as civil servant says that this is a man of great political talent, but as I say, there are some weaknesses. I think one of the biggest weaknesses has been his love of being around powerful and moneyed people.
Yes, indeed. Well, he's had to resign twice from the previous government he was in, hasn't he? Once because he took a rather large loan from Geoffrey Robinson and forgot to declare it. And then when he got himself embroiled with the Hinduja brothers and got them a passport which was having them seen to be jumping the queue. He seems, the other way of looking at it, of course, is that he's got incredibly bad judgment. He doesn't seem to think that things that he does will not come back to haunt him.
Well, the one thing I would say in politics, Mike, is that a lot of stuff goes on that never gets picked up by the press. So there are some people who obviously get more attracted to controversy, but there are others who do get away with these things. So, as I say, he has a career that also reflects some tremendous achievements and ability that is there. But yes, I think Keir Starmer is going to have to make a very difficult decision potentially over the next 48, 72 hours. Right. It may be made for him by Mandelson himself. But unlike last week, as I say, he's not going to have the alibi of an independent report that that makes the decision for him.
No, quite. Kemi Badenoch said this today. Yesterday, I called for Mandelson to go. The victims of Epstein are calling for Mandelson to go. Now we hear most Labour MPs want Mandelson gone, but still Keir Starmer dithers and delays. Our Prime Minister has no backbone, no principles, and no idea. He's weak. Hard to disagree with that, really, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, everyone has to play the political game here, and clearly Kemi Badenoch is trying to get some political capital here, which I entirely understand. I mean, obviously, it is an issue that puts Keir Starmer on the spot. Often with these things, you look back at it and think, well, actually try and act as quickly as you can, because if you let the thing drag on and this goes to a second, third, fourth, fifth day of headlines, none of this is going to look very good. But as I say, I think it's very difficult to see how, in the circumstances, and particularly with the state visit next week, that Peter Mandelson can remain in place.
No, quite. You've just written a book, I understand, called The End of an Era, The Decline and Fall of the Tory Party. We spoke to Nadine Dorries this week, who declared the Tory Party to be dead on Friday when she went off to Tory reform. Is it finished, the Tory Party? Can it come back?
Listen, I don't think it's dead. I think one of the observations I make, I left Parliament in 2019, but one of the observations is that it is clearly got a great historical basis to it, and therefore very difficult to see how it dies. But is it really going to be a viable party of government anytime soon? And the difficulty is that, when you've had a massive defeat like they did in 2024, how is it that you can recover? And of course, I think what has been unusual this time round is just how quickly things have unravelled for the incoming Labour government. And of course, it only had 33.7% of the vote, which was the sixth worst vote share in the 22 elections since the Second World War, and 33.7% is normally a losing percentage. Yeah. So they had this massive landslide. So it was already slightly artificial. But I think from the Tories' perspective, we just needed a period when people can forget and to try to rebuild after 14 years, which had not been particularly successful economically and in other ways. And there were issues such as Brexit and obviously the pandemic that made life difficult for the Conservatives. But the contrast, again, after 1997, obviously everything was set pretty fair for the first two terms for Blair and Brown, and it allowed the Conservatives to rebuild in opposition. They haven't really had the luxury this time, and obviously with the rise of Reform UK and a sense, I think, from the public out there that they want something different. They've had enough of the duopoly, and I think one of the great ironies of the last election was everyone talked, and particularly the Labour Party and Keir Starmer talked about the change election. In many ways, it's been continuity since Labour have got in. And I did detect this, even I wrote about this before the last election. And my instinct always then was it's going to be the 2028-29 election that will be the real change election for the UK. Either the radical reforms, rather like what happened in the 1970s, with a new configuration in place, or it could be that Labour recovers. I mean, it's difficult to see how that happens, but anything can happen in politics. And one of the interesting things, if you look at the Thatcher and Blair governments, when they obviously had a period of a decade in office in both cases, it was their second terms that were far more radical. But I think the one thing that's very evident is this country needs some fundamental institutional reform. It needs a massive shake-up. And I think the public there have their ears open, at least, of doing it in a very different way. And the duopoly that we've been used to for the last 100 years of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party may well be coming to an end.
Yeah, I think that's right. Mark, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Mark Field, former Foreign Office Minister and author, of course. Let's get a voice note from Ben.
Morning, Mike. Ben from Frimley here. On this sad day of 9/11, I'm even more gutted about Charlie Kirk. But what really took the biscuit was Keir Starmer saying that we should be freely open to debate without fear. Honestly, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk.
Ben, thanks very much indeed for that. Morning, Mike. It says Margaret in Edinburgh. I feel compelled to pay tribute to Charlie Kirk. He was a young man with common sense, old school values, and he was assassinated for that view. My God, the person that did that runs away and thinks he has the right to continue with his life. Words fail me. Yeah, I know. Coming up, we're going to speak to Chris Parry, Rear Admiral Chris Parry, indeed, about what's going on with Poland and Russia. We'll get his view as well on the toxic culture of our national debate as well. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. It's 9:30 already. The show has gone very quickly this morning. It's been very sad in many parts of it, and I don't make any apology for that, because we are, of course, having to tell you the news that Charlie Kirk has been assassinated, murdered in America, in Utah, for simply having a different opinion to somebody who didn't agree with him. Let's get a voice note from Gary.
Morning, Mike. Gary from Liverpool speaking. Devastated about Charlie Kirk, because free speech is done and dusted, isn't it? But one thing that he had around the podium, unfortunately, before he was shot, was "prove me wrong." Well, I only say Charlie was right. Free speech is doomed unless we can all talk to each other. Take it easy and have a good one. Bye-bye now.
Gary, you're absolutely right. Andrew in Chelmsford says, Charlie Kirk's tragic death, I'm now seeing and hearing the media describe him as a conservative influencer, yet prior to his murder those same outlets described him as far-right, ultra-right, etc., and this highlights the problem. If extreme labels are attached to someone, there are enough lunatics out there that will see that as a call to arms, and yesterday's events are the consequence. Words matter. So true. Thanks for that, Andrew. Let's talk now to Rear Admiral Chris Parry, former NATO commander, with a bit of breaking news. Apparently the UN Security Council is now due to meet over the violation of Polish airspace by Russia yesterday. Chris, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
I mean, it seems almost irrelevant to talk about anything else in the wake of what happened to Charlie Kirk, but there are so many other amazing and incredible stories going on, including whatever did happen yesterday in Poland over the airspace, and whether Russia did something deliberately, whether it was an act of aggression, whether it was an act of annoyance. What's your take on it?
Yeah, Mike, before I talk about that, one thing I've been saying on social media for about 3 years now is the highest form of bigotry is when you make a moral judgment about somebody's difference of opinion.
Yeah.
And this is a direct result, as Mark Field said, of calling people fascists, Nazis, when they're not. And we've got loads of our politicians doing that at the moment. They need to hang their heads in shame.
Yeah.
Anyway, to Poland. So we've got about 20 drones that penetrated the Polish border. That's not an accident. You can precisely navigate these drones, so the Russians knew exactly what they were doing. There's two aspects to it. One is tactical. You're trying to get into the city of Lvov around the back door rather than through the front door, trying to evade the air defenses. And secondly, the Russians are testing responses to see what happens. And I suspect what they're trying to do is see whether there would be a response if they put some of these drones against some of the weapon supplies that are going through Poland to Ukraine, because quite a lot of the weapon supplies do go through Poland. Right. And I think they're warming up to see if they can get away, frankly, with targeting those supplies.
Yeah. And so what would they make of the response then, do you think? Would they be happy that nothing really serious happened to them as a result of that incursion?
Well, I think they're calibrating the response now. I mean, there is an option, of course, is to do something in return, but that would be escalatory. And you have to think about the outcome that you want. Right. Everybody talks about Sun Tzu and the art of war. It was mentioned just now in relation to Mandelson. But in fact, all the generals that followed Sun Tzu lost subsequently. So I'm never a great quoter of Sun Tzu. But in military practice, what you've got to do is say, OK, we know what Putin wants. What is really going to hurt him? Well, the only thing that's going to hurt him is the application of secondary sanctions to his economy and a stepping up of war material to Ukraine. I keep saying to the government on social media, the best peacekeepers in Ukraine are the Ukrainians themselves. You know, the last thing you want is British, French or ragtag and bobtail peacekeeping troops when there's no peace to keep and you're not prepared to fight the Russians. You're not going to deter anybody.
No, quite. And what's the point of the UN Security Council meeting today?
Oh, it's essentially been called, obviously, by Poland, and they have to respond. I suspect there will be a lot of head shaking, a lot of hand wringing, and a lot of condemnation. And the Russians will go, hey, you know, we're doing this all the time. You know, we're actually
ethnically cleansing 4 oblasts in Ukraine. This is just a pinprick. We don't care.
Yeah, right. And I mean, that is the problem, isn't it? Because it's sort of it's now kind of a stalemate situation, really. Donald Trump's done what he can to try and get people around the table. Putin obviously is not that interested in getting around the table unless somebody gives him a bit of Ukraine to go away with and go, that thanks very much indeed, we'll keep that. I mean, it's almost reached a point where you can't really solve it.
Well, Mike, I mean, he's pretty explicit about what he wants. I mean, on the first day of this war, I sent an email to our chief of defense staff saying he wants the bottom third of Ukraine.
Right.
It's new Russia. It's quite clear in their propaganda. It's quite clear in what they're saying. I'm afraid none of us pay attention to what's going on in Russia from the inside out. We try and view Russia through our own lens. One thing I said recently is I watched a speech by a senior Russian general a while ago to the staff course in Moscow, and a student asked him, how are we going to win the war in Ukraine? And he said, we're just going to throw corpses at it. And that tells you how they think. You know, this is a war they think they're winning, they think they can win, and unless you absolutely cripple them economically, that's what needs to happen. You're not going to stop anything. Remember, they're getting most of their munitions from China, North Korea, and Iran. These Shahed drones that are being used. So Ukraine's not just fighting Russia; it's fighting China, Iran, and North Korea as well.
Well, that's it. I mean, I saw a piece in the FT yesterday saying that that China and Russia are moving ever closer economically, so that there's investment vehicles being dreamed up, so that no matter what the sanctions are that get put on Russia from the West, they will now open up a brand new kind of economic area in China.
Mike, I've been lecturing for 5 years that the world is split into 2 blocks, the Eurasian autocrats, we've talked about this, and the maritime democracies. And that strategic split is now developing into 2 separate economic ecosystems. You know, I'm in the business of forecasting. It always frustrates me that nobody ever pays any attention until it becomes obvious.
Right. Absolutely right. Well, you've always been right on all this stuff, Chris. I don't know why people don't listen to you. It's absolutely ridiculous. Chris, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Chris Parry, Rear Admiral Chris Parry, saying that he's been warning about this stuff for a very, very long time. How about this from Stuart in Ramsden Bell House? He says, morning, champ. Keep the faith and keep doing what you do, providing this platform for free speech and, of course, common sense. Keep entertaining your army of loyal listeners. And this one from Andrew says, the address that President Trump gave about Charlie Kirk, possibly one of the most powerful and angry addresses I have ever seen. Trump will not let this go. Shall we have a look at what Donald Trump actually said last night?
Fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. Today, because of this heinous act, Charlie's voice has become bigger and grander than ever before, and it's not even close. May God bless his memory. May God watch over his family. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Donald Trump speaking last night about the death of Charlie Kirk. Let's get a voice note from Pete on the world of common sense.
Hi, Mike. Pete in Manchester. Great show as usual. Just heard your trailer for your upcoming show with yourself and Jeremy Kyle, where you said there will be lie detector tests and there will be DNA. Wouldn't it be great if you managed to get as a guest, if you managed to get two-tier Kia up on stage, if you just paid him whatever he wanted, that would be amazing. Two-tier Kia taking a lie detector test. you could sell that out as that could be a sellout tour that goes around the country forever. You could beat Peter Kay. Great show. Cheers, mate. Bye.
Pete, thank you very much indeed. Probably break the lie detector machine, wouldn't he? You know, every 2 minutes. Ring correct. Regarding the show with Jeremy in New South, I wish I could, says Tash in Bexhill in East Sussex, but I can't get there. Is there any way I can pay to view and watch it live? I don't think so, but we will be recording it, so there will be a chance that you can see it later. But come along live, because that's the way you want to see it, if you can. I mean, you're only in Bexhill, Tash, come on. You can always get home afterwards. This is, of course, the world of common sense. Coming up, we're going to give you a test. Would you fail the theory test if you had to take it now, even though you've been driving for years and years and years? Nick Freeman is going to join us. We'll find out if you could.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10. It's only about another 15 minutes, and Alex Phillips will be here to take you through all the way till 1. We're going to talk, though, now to Nick Freeman, motoring lawyer and commentator, because there's a story out there currently that says people are so bad at driving that if they had to take the theory test, which I never took because when I took my test there wasn't a theory test, you'd probably fail it. Nick, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Now, I'm just looking at the first question because the Telegraph piece here says a total of 1,900 out of 2,000 drivers managed to fail a stripped-down test prepared by a car insurer consisting of 15 randomly selected questions from the actual theory test. Now, I've looked at the first one and I'm already not sure about whether or not I'd get it right. It says you have stopped in an emergency area. What must you do before you rejoin the carriageway? 1, use the emergency telephone. 2, give an arm signal as you're moving off. 3, switch on your vehicle's headlights. Or 4, move away with your hazard lights on. I'm going to go 4, which is apparently wrong. It says you should use the emergency telephone.
Oh, well, I'm with you on 4 there, Mike. and like you, I haven't done a theory test either.
All right.
But I mean, the statistics are really frightening. 94% of drivers would fail, which means they wouldn't be driving, which means they wouldn't have insurance. So clearly, the problem is you take your test when you're 17, and it's a very thorough test now. The theory test has 2 parts. It has a multiple choice, which includes all different aspects: highway code, stopping distance, road safety, things like fatigue, alcohol levels. and then it has a sort of a hazard perception test. So the first test is about, I think it's about 57 minutes, and the second test is a bit less, but a really thorough test. And what's interesting is that the amount of failure now is higher than it used to be, sort of at about 2007. So I don't know whether people there are worse drivers now. And this is leading to people actually committing fraud and getting other people to take the test for them, both the theory and the practical test, which is another problem. Well, so I think there's a simple solution, a very simple solution, and that's we renew our driving licenses every 10 years. Wouldn't it be sensible every 10 years to retake our theory test?
I suppose
because
so.
The law changed.
I mean, it sounds, in theory, if you don't mind me saying so, it sounds like a good idea. However, I know that there's a huge backlog currently for people trying to get even any kind of test because, you know, there's just been so much of a backlog since COVID that, you know, there weren't any driving tests being given out. So, I mean, I don't know if the system could handle people taking one every 10 years, could they?
Well, there is a backlog, but we're concerned with road safety, and if we're saying, look, 94% of drivers, current drivers, and you and I have just illustrated, we've got the first question wrong. It must be in everyone's interest, mustn't it, to say, look, the system just doesn't work, to take it when you're 17, 18, and again when you don't even have to take it again at 70. So the law changes, the highway code changes, mobile phone law changes, the law's changing all the time, and you know, I do about 50,000 miles on the road, and I've just got that first part of the test wrong, which I'm really disappointed about, because I would assume I would have got it right. Yes. So we learn it every 10 years, and I think the issue is the driving license standards needs to get up to speed. If they're a bit chaotic at the moment, a bit behind, they need to sort themselves out so that they can accommodate this. Japan does it. Yeah. It works there, and the statistics show much safer driving there than here. So it's something that I think we have no choice, but we need to do it. And I mean, I can't really.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I don't want to bring up the subject of migrants particularly, but I mean, one of the problems I think in Britain at the moment is we've got an awful lot of people driving foreign registered cars who have come here from other countries, mostly Eastern European, and they don't seem to have the same kind of driving rules that we have. They don't seem to know what to do at roundabouts. I mean, I see this a lot. They don't seem to know where to stop. They don't seem to know. I notice people pulling out a lot more now than they used to when you're coming down a main road. You know what I mean? It's like people are much less sort of likely to adhere to the regulations anyway.
Well, they're very discourteous. There are, I think, over 1 million drivers who are on our roads, maybe more than that, who haven't actually taken a UK test, and they're not driving foreign vehicles, they're driving English vehicles. Yes. But this problem's clearly a much wider problem, because the statistics show that it really spreads right across the board to everyone. Right. So it's easy to point a finger of blame. I mean, you know, I'm up and down the motorways all the time, and the number of people who sit in the outside lane at sort of 65 miles an hour, and lanes 1 and 2, maybe 3 are clear, and they won't get over. And I don't think it's that they're not bruising for a fight. They simply do not understand.
Don't know. Yeah.
No, they don't understand what the law requires them to do. Right. And there are very few police on the road, and very few prosecutions for driving without reasonable consideration for the road users.
And I was on the motorway. I was up in Birmingham last weekend. I was coming back on the M40. A number of people who come right behind you when I'm doing about 70, 75, which is you're allowed to do, and people just come right behind you, like literally within about sort of 3 feet of your back bumpers to get you to move out of the way. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, it is insane, and that's obviously borne out by their frustration. They're probably thinking if someone's travelling at 70 in the outside lane, with the tolerance zone built in, you can probably get up to 78. So what they're saying is, look, if the near side lanes are clear, you shouldn't be in the outside lane. The outside lane is purely for overtaking. And what you often have, and you'll know this, is the outside lanes very heavily congested, and the other lanes are fairly free of traffic. Yeah. And then you get people who are, for want of a better expression, undertaking, cutting up, and then moving back in front. And drivers who are in the outside lane know what they're trying to do, and they try and stop them getting in, which in itself is another dangerous activity.
It's mad. And while we've been talking, I've been taking various different questions on the test, right? I've only managed to get one right so far. I'm going to finish with one for you, right? This is it. Where may you overtake on a one-way street? 1, only on the left-hand side. 2, overtaking isn't allowed. 3, only on the right-hand side, or on either the right or the left. What do you think?
A one-way street. I would say you'd overtake on the right-hand side.
That's what I said. It was wrong. Apparently,
but you're not allowed to overtake at all.
No, apparently you can overtake on either side.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, there you go.
I mean, because if I see somebody overtaking me on the left on a one-way street, I'm usually shaking my fist at them, but there we are. Anyway, listen, good to talk to you, Nick. Thanks very much indeed. Nick Freeman, motoring lawyer, commentator. Bloody difficult, this. Let's see the next one. What does the solid white line at the side of the road indicate? Traffic lights ahead, edge of the carriageway, footpath on the left, cycle path. I'm going to go cycle path. It's wrong. No, edge of the carriageway, apparently. I've only got one right out of about 8. Crikey. All right, next question. Let's do this one. Where are the amber reflective studs found on a motorway? Between the hard shoulder and the carriageway, between the acceleration lane and the carriageway, between the central reservation and the carriageway, between each pair of lanes. I think it's between the hard shoulder and the carriageway, isn't it? No! It's between the central reservation and the carriageway. I'm not doing it anymore. This is ridiculous. I think they're going to take my car off me at this rate. Anyway, coming up, we're going to talk about UFOs. Let's get a voice note from Dave.
Morning, Mike. It's a pretty sad day for all today. My mum and dad are getting on a little bit now. I introduced them to Charlie Kirk. I've introduced them to Talk, rather than the BBC and Sky garbage that you normally get. And again, it proves what I said. No other news outlet, news presenter, anybody can get upset live on air several times and still carry on. It just shows that the sincerity that you've got behind, and I genuinely mean this, Mike. All credit to you, mate. All credit to you. Talk, I didn't think it could go higher in my expectations, but it just has, and you've just made it happen. Well done. Well done, Mike. Love you.
Dave, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, it's been a bit tough at times this morning because it just affects people. I get affected the same as everybody else, you know. Not any point in me pretending to be some kind of automaton like bloody Keir Starmer. Anyway, coming up, we're going to talk to Richard Lawrence because it turns out that that Charlie Kirk was a bit of a UFO enthusiast as well. And we're going to talk about that coming next.
It was me who actually made the BBC Trust rewrite all of their rules when I was head of media for UKIP, and I argued, because they only based it on domestic elections, the most recent domestic election, i.e. they didn't involve European Parliament elections, and they didn't look at polling. And I kept making the case as head of media for UKIP back in the day, in 2013. Actually, you're doing a disservice to the general public when you look at polling and how many people actually want to hear from UKIP who are going to be voting for them. And I had to produce all this evidence, and we had a series of meetings, and I was the one who changed the rules.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 5 minutes to 10. We're nearly out of here. Alex Phillips will be here to take you through till 1 o'clock. We're going to talk to Richard Lawrence, author of UFOs and the Extraterrestrial Message. Let's have a look at this first of all. This is Charlie Kirk's video from last year about a UFO over Wisconsin.
You're about to see them again. Just watch up above the horizon, and they're going to get really bright, and then they're going to go away. See them? There's two of them right there. Those are not airplanes.
Yeah, they keep circling.
They just keep circling, and they're going to go away.
And there's nothing on your radar right now?
No, there's nothing there. I can zoom out.
Now the light's going out.
They're gone.
Have you ever seen anything like that before?
Wow. Nothing on the radar, but these are not aeroplanes, according to those two guys in the cockpit there. Richard, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
What was that, do you think?
Well, it could easily have been a UFO. They like to call them UAPs now. They've sort of changed the name, but the same thing. There's been sensational information out this week in Congress, including the fact that the most powerful missile America has just literally bounced off an extraterrestrial craft last October. And this was shown to people in Congress. But on this tragic day, I thought I'll just have a look, because he was a champion of free speech, Charlie Kirk, and indeed he did have this sighting. He did film it last October, and he did put it up. He got millions of views on X. So I wouldn't quite say he's an enthusiast, but he was certainly an honest, free-speaking person, and he certainly hasn't ruled it out being extraterrestrial.
So what are we looking at here? It says they are here. Is that a
Yes.
UFO struck by the Hellfire missile? It just bounces off it. Is that what we're seeing?
That's right, yeah. That was shown at Congress on Tuesday by a House of Representative person. So what we're looking at there, that's their passing is the missile, but the object that's in the frame, and then this is afterwards. So they're the extraterrestrial spacecraft. There's the extraterrestrial spacecraft before it's hit. It's flying across, and then a Hellfire missile, their most powerful missile, hits it, just bounces off. They're absolutely in shock because that shouldn't happen.
And why did they fire a missile at it, though?
Well, I think it's disgusting they would fire a missile at an extraterrestrial spacecraft. It's not the first time they've tried to do that. It completely failed.
And what sort of speed would you say that's doing?
They weren't quite sure, but could be thousands of miles an hour.
Really?
It's unknown. They weren't quite sure of that fact. It was presented from an unknown source because so many whistleblowers are being damaged. They're being... Talk about free speech. I mean, they're having their careers ruined. There are even talk of some of them having been killed. I'm talking about military personnel, Air Force personnel in America.
Right. Blimey. It's quite an extraordinary situation, isn't it? Because there's an awful lot of this in America. We don't see so much of it in this country, but there's an awful lot of interest, and there's been many congressional hearings about it, haven't there?
They have. This is the third one, and there are going to be more. They're campaigning for the declassification of this info. It should be information for us. It's not for... And the strange thing is, even the elected representatives, Democrat and Republican, they are being lied to, and they aren't able to get to the truth, and they're saying so. I think they're streets ahead, I will say, of this country and other countries in having these hearings.
Well, and we've got Peter Mandelson as the UK ambassador to the United States of America. You can't really be that surprised that we haven't got any information on UFOs. He keeps it all quiet.
I think his interests are elsewhere.